got a fan. When I switch the battery on, you might be able to hear the fan spin up like that. And you'll also notice that it's got a little Antminer on it as well. Just a USB Antminer, which is about 100 gigahash. And that's, good enough just to get you some small change. Now, this is not going to ship with the miner because I can't keep the cost down low enough. But of course, I'm going to do a crowdfund probably starting Monday on Indiegogo and StartJoin. And then on Saturday next week, I'm going to go live on air. And for the price of a Foxconn factory worker in China, I'm going to make these for you, like hand make each and every one of them. And you'll be able to see me make them. And so I wanted to do this really as an art piece. It's partly an art project, but it's also a fundraiser for the distributed tipping app that we successfully crowdfunded and built earlier this year called ProTip. That's protip.is. And we ran out of money a few weeks ago, and Leo, the lead developer, needs money. He needs to get some cash in. So I said I would do this. This is my work of art. I want to work, in these conditions because I want to get a taste of what it's like for billions of other people who service us here in the West with all of our consumables. And so I saw it as an opportunity really to not only raise money for ProTip, but also to make a statement about distributing and scaling the network, because these full nodes have a full copy of the blockchain on them. And if you configure it correctly, you can actually be serving blocks and serving transactions out to light wallets. People that run mobile phones will be able to send an instruction to your node to request information from the blockchain, and you'll be able to serve that out for them, and all for under $150, which is a fraction of the price that 21 Inc. are selling theirs for. Of course, theirs has a miner. This Antminer, by the way, is only about £15 in the UK, so they're very, very cheap. I just can't really fit that in for a reasonable price. But if anyone wants to put in any requests, if you want Wi-Fi cards, I've got Wi-Fi cards as well. I've got VGA adapters if you need them. I'd rather not ship it with those just to keep the costs down. But if you do need it, you will have the opportunity to put in any personal requests. Just one last thing. It doesn't just have Bitcoin on here. I've also put IPFS on here, which is a new interplanetary file system. It's a bit like BitTorrent, except it has read-write access. It's got Tor built in. The Bitcoin node will route through Tor automatically when you get it. It's got PGP, Open VPN, and if anybody has any other suggestions as to what it should have, again, you can ping me at Mr. Chris Ellis on Twitter with your ideas. Thank you very much.
Awesome.
All
Chris.
right.
Thank you so much for sharing, man. This project is super important. I mean, there's just not a whole lot of people that are willing to go ahead and put their passion into a project without being paid to start out with, and who won't take any VC funding and these types of things. And like you said, Chris, I mean, you are making these for the price of what somebody in China, could create for just a couple dollars, a day. Yeah. And so this is just really awesome. Again, Chris, maybe you could just real quickly, just to finish out, tell everybody the importance of why we need more Bitcoin nodes, why there needs to be more of these around for everybody across the planet, and countries that like North Korea and countries that you may not think that we need them in, but we do. So, Chris, if you could just tell us more about Bitcoin.
The essence of Bitcoin is that it's decentralized and distributed. And at the moment, if you look at BitNodes, if you look at bitnodes.21.co, you'll see a map of all of the Bitcoin full nodes running on the network. And you'll see a high concentration in Western Europe and America, particularly the West Coast and the East Coast of America. And that is not decentralized. That's not distributed. Diversity is key to resilience. And so we also need to get these nodes into regions of the world like South America. We've got colleagues of ours in the World Crypto Network, particularly Rock Barcelos in Brazil. We've got friends in Nepal, in India, in Hong Kong. And also I'm hopefully somewhere in the region of South and North Korea, although I'm working on that at the moment. If we can get the blockchain out to these areas, the reason that's important is because it reduces the latency on the network. Anyone running a light wallet on a mobile phone, particularly like in Botswana, because obviously the lady from Botswana is going to also be a recipient of these, and you can donate those to these various people. You'll have the opportunity to do that on the webpage. Her node will now start to reduce the latency on the network for anyone running a light wallet. You won't need to rely on these large centralized companies like blockchain.info, as if they were the gatekeepers to the blockchain, right? As if their API, which has been notoriously buggy as of late and actually broke the ProTip app in its few weeks of launch, which really annoyed us. We were like, well, hell, why do we need these big centralized companies?
It's called blockchain info. right? So it
Right,
must be the
like,
gatekeeper. No, I'm
but
just
the thing is
joking.
that,
I mean, yeah,
look,
it is
they
dumb that the
work.
API broke. That's really dumb.
Yeah, the
You
API
know,
broke, and then they changed it. They changed the specification. It didn't tell anyone. So CryptoKit and our app, it all broke, and we had to try and work it out. But anyway, look, so take nothing away from blockchain. They're hardworking guys, but the problem is that they're making the fatal mistake of trying to be big. Stop trying to be big and start being relevant. Just build something that works really, really well for a few people locally to you, and stop trying to be all things to all people and take over the world. And you've got the final idea, like companies like 21 Inc., which are owned by Andreessen Horowitz and so forth. So that's why it's important, because power is local. And when you've got a full copy of the blockchain, you have a copy of the global ledger right in your hands.
Awesome.
okay, great.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks a lot. Real quick, I just want to introduce Theo. Theo just came in here a little bit late, having some technical difficulties, but he's in here now, so I'd like to welcome Theo. How you doing, Theo?
I'm doing very well. I'm excellent, and I'm glad. I agree with Chris. I think that stop trying so hard. Just do stuff.
Exactly. Just stop, like Chris said, stop trying to be big, start trying to be relevant.
Yeah, right. Not trying hard, but stop trying to be big, like you said. I totally agree with that.
Yeah, awesome. All right, guys. Well, I think we should maybe start the first story. The first story is really kind of struck me a little bit as a longtime Bitcoin enthusiast. Basically, everything this guy said kind of really hit home with me. So let me just paste in that link. This guy here by the name of David Seaman, I think, he posted a video about how can we get Bitcoin to its first billion users. And right now, as we know, there's a few million users or something like that. But he really kind of pointed out and kind of gave us a little bit of a roadmap, even maybe, to try to get Bitcoin to its first billion users. And I agree with a lot of the points that he said. And talking about how instead of just trying to explain so much about the technology, just maybe even like Chris said, explain it to someone that's going to help them, that they can explain it in a way that they can be able to say, oh, hey, this can help me directly tomorrow, not in 5 years when Bitcoin is $5,000 a coin. So I'd like to throw it over to Chris first. Chris, tell me, what do you think about this story?
Yeah, I think, again, though, I would reiterate, like, it's not about the size or the volume or the amplitude. It's really about the clarity of the message. You've got to listen first. Listen to what people say they want. Give them what they need, okay? So that means, like, not just, like, telling people they need Bitcoin or telling them they need the blockchain. Work out what their needs are first. And if Bitcoin is a solution, like it will be in many occasions, then you need to help it make it relevant for people. Part of the reason why I think it's important that people host their own full node, even if they don't buy one of mine, I mean, I'm still going to give you the instructions on GitHub on how to build your own, is that you get to get your hands dirty. At the moment, we rely far too much on these technorati class, this kind of elite group of developers who perhaps through no fault of their own, they're not perhaps the best communicators in the world, and sometimes they present a hostile exterior that people find difficult to get into. You need to understand cryptography the same way you understand your car. You need to have the same level of understanding of how this works so that you get a good intuitive knowledge of it, so you can't be lied to, so you can't be duped, so you know when something's wrong. And you know how to secure your communications between people so that you know you're not having your privacy invaded. So I'm not so much interested in getting it up to 1 billion users. I'm interested in getting it to 1 million relevant users. I'm interested in carving out a space for a group of people that need to be able to function, that can't currently survive in the standard economic system because they're completely shut out culturally and economically.
Very true. Very true. I agree with that as well. I really think that we need to get Bitcoin into the hands where people are going to use it the most first before we start worrying about, huge price increases. As Andreas always says, it's always about the other 6 billion. It's about the other 6 billion people on this earth who have been left behind, unbanked, just completely left to their own vices. Oh, and then maybe we'll also control them through the CIA, through war, and all these other different things. So we're not going to include you in our system, except for the fact that we're going to use you in our system. So that's absolutely, what Bitcoin, I think, can really help and really help with in the third world countries. I mean, South Africa with M-Pesa and so on and so forth, South America, the Philippines, taking off in all of these countries. Daniel, what do you think about this story?
Yeah, definitely was an interesting video. He made some great points. I also would agree with Chris. I mean, if there do need to be a lot of people that understand it, you know, on the inside and everything, and are able to actually work with it and everything. But you know, at the same time, and I guess we need that first, maybe before we go for 1 billion users. But at the same time, I think he even used the metaphor about the car in the video. Maybe it was in my head, but he said like, you don't really know how your car works. Not everyone does. You don't know the specifics, and of course those are great things to know, and people need to. Some people have to be absolute experts about that stuff. But unfortunately, I think he also said in the video, people are busy, and they're not able to dive that deeply in. So, and then another thing would be then once you do want to get to 1 billion users, I would actually take his message, which was basically simplify. Simplify when you explain Bitcoin to people. You don't have to go into blockchain and everything.
I have a hard time with that.
Yeah, honestly, I would take it even further if possible and say you don't really even need to explain anything. What you need to do is show them what's useful about it. Just let them see, oh, this is great. I mean, he mentioned, I think, Facebook, and I thought of YouTube. When YouTube explodes, it's not because people are like, well, you can upload videos and they're saved as MP4s and anyone can look. No, it's because, holy crap, look at this hilarious video. Here, click this link and watch it right now. It's because they can just use it right away. So
awesome, very true. I mean, you know, somebody's asking, you know, in the chat, you know, is Bitcoin accessible to everybody? And the answer is Bitcoin is accessible to everybody with an internet connection. And that pretty much means the entire world. So that's just automatic economic inclusion right there. If you have the internet, you can use Bitcoin. Just like how the internet, you know, broke down the barriers for information. If you had the internet, you could have a newspaper. You could have a TV show. Just look at what we're doing right here. You know, this is all completely for free. Everybody is joining here for free. I'm not paying these guys to be here. You know, these guys.
What? You're not paying me? I don't get it. That's good. That's good.
Yeah. So let's see here.
Yeah, but I think just add to what you just said there. Bitcoin is the internet, and it's an advancement of TCP/IP and UDP. Actually, it's a stateful protocol, and it introduces the notion of digital scarcity. So the analogy to YouTube doesn't quite hold because YouTube doesn't have this property of scarcity and therefore value, and as a result, there is something you do need to understand. Like private keys are important. If you don't have them in your, on your possession, they're not really yours. There are certain basics, but if we can get those out to other people that find that interesting and enthusiastic, they'll spread the message. Like good leaders make good.
That's true.
Very true. Very true. Theo, just wondering if you could just rejoin real quick. I can't see your video. I can hear you, but it's like the voice.
Okay. Well, I'll just do my ghost.
Okay.
Then I'll reload. Okay. So yeah, I agree with some of those points. I like the car analogy really well. I really do like that because you do need to know enough about your car that you don't get ripped off. So that makes sense. But actually, I watched that video and I thought, you know what? Bitcoin just needs to get balls and not try so hard. Don't be like the dude on the bar that's really desperate and be like, hey, look at me. You see what I mean? Like, stop. Like, don't try to sell and all that shit. That's bullshit. Just be really good and badass and screw the public. They need us. They need financial sovereignty. And they can go to hell if they don't need it. That's fine. They're missing out. And that's okay. And that's why we're all here. Not because... and that's it, basically. And everyone else that's trying really hard and all that stuff, they might get users for a while, but it's not going to last in the long term, So I think that, I don't really care about 1 billion, trillion, or 100,000. I just care that it works. It works really well. It's sovereign. And, this magic internet money is kind of magic in the sense that we just accept that I can send money, Bitcoin to any of you guys, and it just works. But normally, that only works if there's a big company involved. You know what I mean? We're used to sending PayPal $5 through PayPal, right? And we accept that works. But this is really working, and there is no company behind it. I mean, we just have accepted that for a long time. And I've even sent people here on Blab, a few bits, 50 cents, $1, whatever. And they're like, okay, great. Now what? I said, well, I just sent you that and it worked, and no company was involved, and it just takes a while for them to kind of get it, but that's okay. You know what I mean? So, and I think there is no real easy. You can try to. I think that you have to. It depends on who you're talking to. So, some people will get it because they like gold. They probably already get it a little bit, scarcity, money, that kind of stuff. Some people get it because they're like, okay, well, I want to, what's it called? Back page, last page,
Back page,
or whatever. They're like, oh yeah, well, I got to, order some services off last page. So now I got to use Bitcoin. Just yesterday, someone said, hey, someone asked me yesterday to help them with Bitcoin because they wanted to do something on last page. And they said that last page doesn't even use credit cards anymore. And I said, yeah, there's a good example. Like it or not, that's sovereignty. That's what, you don't have to ask permission. So whenever the services get shut off, then you can use Bitcoin. And I think that's where the real value is in a lot of this stuff. Now, of course, there's definitely other aspects of it, but I think that's the main thing. And honestly, a billion, things have got to get worse before they get better, in my opinion, for that, if we're really going to have that a goal. So I'm going to reload, and maybe I'll come back on camera.
All right, awesome, Theo. Hey, thanks again. We definitely appreciate your commentary. So just try to reload, and if we don't get you back, then we will all be suffering. But we'll try.
I just wanted to wait for one super quick thing, and I put a link in the chat that links to the original iPhone landing page, the first one ever. And like I said, I agree with all these points about, not trying to sell it and everything. But I just thought that was interesting because if you are trying to sell something, if you are trying to get 1 billion users, there's literally like 50 words on that page. It's incredibly simple. It says like widescreen iPod, revolutionary phone, breakthrough device, high technology. Those are their main points. It's incredibly simple. And you just show people what you can do with it. So
Awesome. Well, before we get to the next story, just want to say we're literally at 99 viewers right now. So we just need one more to get 100. So that's awesome. Okay, there it is, 100 viewers. So this is only my second show. So, I'm definitely very unprofessional at this. This is why I bring in the professionals like Daniel, Chris, and Theo, and so on. So thanks, guys, a lot. This is awesome. We're having a great time talking this week's Bitcoin news. So let's go ahead and move on to the next story. Let me paste it into the chat. There it is. And so the ex-Barclays boss decided to put out a statement out there that is basically saying the financial system, the traditional financial system, is about to have their Uber moment. So I really want to talk about this for a few minutes. Chris, can you give us a couple of comments on this?
Well, this was Anthony Jenkins, of course, who recently lost his job at Barclays over a disagreement on the direction. And I think it's very interesting that Barclays Accelerator in Canary Wharf, where I have been known to frequent and on a number of occasions, are very much into distributed ledger systems. And they've got an interesting approach. Of course, they're very old school. It's all about locking it down, making it proprietary. It's like, yeah, we really like what you guys are doing over there with all the disruption and the innovation, but could you just kind of make it for us? Like, could you do all of the stuff you did earlier? But could you just like erode the commons even more? Like, I actually went for a meeting, not at Barclays, but at one of the other banks there. I got wheeled into this like fancy kind of boardroom, with this big long table. I'm sat at one end and they've got this suit at the other. It's standing room only. It's packed out. And the guy says to me, totally brazen, like looks me in the eye and he goes, what's the regulatory capture opportunity in Bitcoin? And this was like over a year ago now. Yeah. And I was like, seriously, like, are you trolling me or what? Because you just bringing me in here so I can tell you how to like make this private, and so you can just turn money into more money for all your investors. And I was just like, I can't work with these people. And they're right. Like I even took a picture of like a landscape of like all these buildings in downtown London, the equivalent of downtown London, like in Canary Wharf. And I said, look, half of these jobs are going to go. And that's what Jenkins is saying. A lot of these people are just paper shufflers. They're not doing anything, or they're salespeople, or they're marketers, or they've got some bullshit job. They're not relevant anymore. And that's the problem, is that when you get a job, getting a job is just a strategy. It's not a solution. It's not what you really want. What you really want to do is your passion. You want to do what you wanted to be when you were 7. You wanted to do all those dreams, but you left those behind a long time ago when you sold out to the man, right? And you went and got a job at one of these banks. Okay, fine. So you got the job at the bank, but what you forgot is you've got to keep evolving. You've got to keep moving. You can't just settle in a job and expect it to be there forever and then try to preserve your lifestyle. So he's absolutely right. I mean, he's got it nailed. And these people are struggling to stay relevant. They're struggling to stay ahead of the curve. And that's why they keep pestering us at all our conferences and keep coming in and sending recruiters in to try and like hire people like me and other sort of so-called blockchain developers, so that we don't go off and build really good open source code, just like we did with ProTip. $12,000, that's all we raised. We didn't raise $2.5 million. We didn't have VC funding. And it's an embarrassment to all these other companies that are raising millions of dollars and not producing anything.
Definitely agree with you on that. And just to clear up for people who maybe aren't familiar with Uber and what happened, basically they completely disrupted the cab industry. Before Uber, it was very centralized and there was a lot of corruption, and these people even created their own unions. I mean, we have cab driver unions, people. And, Uber came in and just completely decentralized it like Bitcoin, gave the power back to the people, let every single person be an Uber driver. Let anybody call any Uber driver from anywhere, and let it all be seamless and instant over the internet. So that's awesome.
My question is though, when does Uber get its Uber moment? Like when does that company become decentralized? Because at the moment, it's all about private information for these businesses. These tech startups are in the business of learning about your private identity so that they can sell it onto a marketing firm. So I wonder if someone on Ethereum or somebody on another distributed system will actually Uber.
Awesome. Daniel, let me hear what you think, man.
Yeah, I don't think there's any question about it. The banks are slow. They're old. They're not nearly as useful as our other options. So honestly, it's interesting. I mean, I'm not sure. The Uber moment is kind of still going on. I mean, there's still plenty of cab drivers out there. We're still battling legislation and who knows what in different cities. So it's definitely going to be a bumpy ride, and it'll take a long time. But yeah, no question about it. At some point, the banks are. They won't completely disappear, probably. Not right away, anyway. But yeah, they'll have that moment.
Awesome. Yeah, I really do think, we know it's going to take time. We know that these huge incumbents don't get disintermediated overnight, and it's going to take years. But clearly, the path to disruption is there for everybody to see, for the whole world to see, for everybody to look at and be like, which solution, I wonder, is going to win out in the end? Centralized and corrupt, or decentralized, free and open? It's going to be difficult. Theo, what do you think about this banks having their Uber moment?
Well, it's a nice headline. I'm sure it got a lot of clicks. And that's great. Anytime you combine, there is this, I think someone here posted it, but I think it's going around. It's like startup bingo. You've got you can combine a bunch of stuff like the Uber of whatever.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Like the Uber of Chinese buffets. And then you can combine that, and then we could do even mix crypto in with it. So it's tokenization of the Uber of Chinese buffets, decentralized blockchain, or I don't know. You just throw a whole bunch of stuff together. So the Uber moment sounds a little hyperboiled, but yeah, sure, of course. The banks know what's up. They know it's game on, and they're trying to remain relevant. And I think that's the main word, relevant. They're trying to remain relevant. And I think some of them are genuinely interested, and they think, okay, this is really cool. Maybe we could have our own little Uber thing, and get fees or whatever, and figure out how we could change our business model. And then another aspect of it, though, is kind of like, oh well, what do we do? Well, we need to have one of these to mitigate our risk. So if we have one of these blockchain things in our back pocket, then if it does explode, that we can say, hey, we have that, let's use it now. Okay, so that's kind of one aspect, is they're covering their asses, and the other aspect is some of them are really into it. So I think those are the two main things that I see as far as the whole banks and blockchain. I think there's another topic coming up about the whole blockchain thing. So I've seen both, it's just my subjective viewpoint. People I've met that are in banks and stuff, kind of like what Chris was saying. I've seen some that are genuinely interested and are like, yeah, this is going to destroy my job. I think I'm going to come to your Hangouts and figure this stuff out. This is really cool. And then other people are like, well, that's cool. I think we still have a customer service edge. Yeah, we're going to figure this out. And I'm like, okay, great. I'm very interested. How are you going to figure this out? I said, oh, don't worry. In 2 years, we'll have this down. Okay, that's fine. So really, there's really a wide range of, let's see what happens. I'm really curious what's going to happen. And it kind of goes a little bit, I think the reason that a lot of them have confidence goes back to what I was saying earlier. And I think a lot of us is this whole like billion thing. They don't see that. They don't see this like as, oh, it's going to be a billion. They see it as a little threat. It's like still like a little niche thing. Your average public guy or girl is not going to care about this kind of stuff. They just want to get money. They want to buy beer. They want to buy cigarettes and drugs and pay for potato chips and that kind of stuff. I mean, right? Isn't that what you want to do? Or get on Blab and do cool stuff, right? You don't want to, no one cares about all that other stuff. But then there's going to be a time when they want to use Backpage or whatever the hell it's called, or they want to get something that's not quite allowed, and be like, wait a minute. Oh, yeah, I heard about this weird thing you can do. You don't have to ask permission from the bank. And I think that's going to be the more of the watershed moment than any of this other stuff, in my opinion.
Very true. Very true. And again, as Andreas says, they think of us as a lemonade stand. And that's perfectly fine, because we don't want them to see us coming. We want them to turn around, look at their backs, see us as a lemonade stand, go a few feet, then turn around and see us as a Walmart. Every time they look back over their shoulders, Bitcoin has evolved. It has gotten more people into the community. It has gotten faster. It has gotten more reliable. It has gotten more features. So it's something that I think is a hydra that you just really can't stop. So these types of things are going to take time. Like we all agree. We do agree that this is going to take a few years, but everybody agrees that the trajectory is right there, right for everybody to see. Our hockey stick moment, when you line up the graph, the price graph from the beginning, it's just absolutely phenomenal, going from pennies or even nothing all the way to many hundreds of dollars. We hear the trolls all the time. They're like, Bitcoin lost 20% in one day. Bitcoin lost 5% in one day, or all of these crazy things. And it's like, you know what? That's going to be expected. All the people who are in Bitcoin, who are smart, and understand these things, we know that this is going to happen. This is called volatility. We know this is going to happen. But all the people who are in Bitcoin also know that, hey, wait a second. It dropped, by $20, $50 today, but I bought in around $100. So I'm still up like crazy, and so this is this type of trend is going to continue for years to come. I think we're going to literally have price drops from 2,000 to 1,000, and even 5,000 to 2,500, and then everybody's going to say Bitcoin's dead. When we're in the thousands of dollars per coins. So I think that's still coming, but it's going to be great to see. And so far, everything you guys were saying, I totally agree. So thanks again for you guys' opinions. Looks like we have 160 viewers now, and we just kind of keep going up. So that's awesome. Go ahead and tweet it out, guys. Tweet out the page. Let people know that we're on. We got a bunch more stories to go. So go ahead and tweet it out. This has been super fun. I've never met Chris before in real life, so this is like a big, huge moment as a fan for me and as a community member to be able to talk to these guys. Theo as well. I had him on, Theo and Daniel, for the first time last show. met them both live on air. And so this has been super great and a bit of a dream for me come true. So thanks, guys, again for being here. Let's move on maybe to our next story. This is one that I particularly like because as me and Chris have already mentioned a couple times on the show, we are now entering the distributed ledger space, ladies and gentlemen. So let me paste that link in. Looks like the BIS, the bank, one of the big banks came out this week, Monday, in fact, telling people that after their multi-year-long study, that digital currencies could disrupt central banking model. Maybe. So let me see what you think about that, Chris. Go ahead.
So the distributed ledger space, I don't think we can do screen share, but if we could, just picture, if you will, what is his name? Like that guy, Mini-Me. What's that guy's called? Like distributed ledger space, you know.
Yes.
And this is what you've got to picture in your mind. Like these people are so like and it's just so, it's embarrassing. And I don't know what to say. I don't know whether to apologize to people or like, I'm really sorry. I'm not with him. Okay. He just turned up at this conference and like, he's like giving all this stuff because they're not allowed to say Bitcoin because it scares them. And then they think, oh no, if I say Bitcoin, I'm like one of those libertarian people like on Reddit that trolls people the whole time and all of this thing. And so, yeah, they want to try and rebrand it. They want to take over the message. They want to control the language that gets used so that people think to themselves, you know, well, maybe it's got all the virtues of Bitcoin. It has all the properties that Bitcoin is known for, but it's a brand that I recognize. And people are very susceptible to brands. That if you control the information in a system, if you define the terms that get used in that system, you control the beliefs. And if you control the beliefs, you control price, you control actions, you control what everybody does. And that's really what they're trying to do. I don't have much more to say about it. I find it infuriating. And the only thing I can really do is mock them on Twitter to much hilarity. So feel free to hashtag distributed ledger space with me and troll them the whole way.
Absolutely. I definitely paid attention to a few of those tweets that you already tweeted out, Chris, on that day that they announced it. It was absolutely hilarious. Everybody's like, look, I think you said something like, everybody start looking for distributed ledger space developers now.
What used to be blockchain, right? And the next one that it's going to be, just for all you recruiters and salespeople out there, when you want to jump onto the next meme, it'll be Merkle DAGs. The DAG stands for Direct Acyclic Graph. And it will be IPFS. The IPFS, by the way, is on my Bitcoin full node as standard, so you don't have to install it. It's pretty easy to install anyway. But that is basically a BitTorrent that is read-write. So it's no longer this server-client paradigm of where, you know, you have these data centers that serve out the data and then us mere consumers, you know, these humble consumers just like taking it all in like candy. Now, when you view content on the internet, you become a host for that content. You are both a server, a producer, and a consumer. And this is a much, much better way of running civilization and respecting people's personal identity and sovereignty. Your identity now is asserted by you. You can have a public key and you can assert your identity all over the place and assign it with your legal identity if you want to, not necessarily through Facebook and not domiciling all your data in San Francisco or wherever. So I think that, the next trend I'll need to jump on top of is the Merkle DAG. And it'll be fun to see.
Awesome. Yeah, it's absolutely hilarious. Daniel, let me hear what you think about this distributed ledger space, man. What do you think?
I would agree with all that. They're not interested in focusing on Bitcoin. They're being a little crazy. I would echo basically what I said about the Uber moment with banks. Yeah, no question about it. Of course, this is disruptive. Of course, the banks are facing some serious competition. And of course, they didn't need to do it, like you said, a multi-year report to figure that out. Another thing that I would say is really interesting is their tone is almost like what am I thinking of? Spooky. I don't remember the word I'm thinking of, but it's like, this is ominous. There we go. Ominous. It's like, this is dangerous. Like, this could cause technical issues, widespread technical issues if we don't have control of the currency and if it's not government issued. And it's a joke. So
Absolutely, absolutely. Again, I just have to reiterate one more time. These guys took years to come out with this stupid report, for people to be able to understand. Bitcoin's only been around for 6 years. And so this thing took them multiple years to figure out that this might disintermediate their entire business model, because we all know that the bank's business model is fraud. That is their number one business model. And if you ask any Wall Street executive on, he'll tell you the exact same thing. That's what's sad. They will tell you and straight up admit, they make movies about it, people, that this is the normal goings on. And of course, that's the trick that Hollywood does all the time. They make a movie out of it. So now it's just what happens in the movies, not really in real life. Theo, let me get your 2 cents on this, man. I gotta hear what you.
Okay, great. Yeah, well, I have some different opinions about this, and before I get into it, I just want to say, I guess that like at the end we'll go over the questions, because we're already getting some pretty cool questions from the public, and right now we've got like a kind of like a comment question from Face Radiation. So if you guys could put /Q, then they go on the left side, and then we can make sure we don't forget them like one by one, like Face Radiation. That's a cool kind of comment. We can talk about it in the chat, but so we don't forget to go over some of these. If you put /Q, then we get over it. I think that actually, when I think about it, no, I forgot. What is the name of the organization again? RWC or whatever. They got Mike Hearn now and all this guys. What is it called?
Oh, that's the Blockchain Alliance, held by R3.
R3
is the
R3.
startup.
Yeah, Blockchain Alliance is even like another animal, but yeah, the R3 thing. So, that's kind of actually in some ways I see what the guy that wrote that distributed ledger space is trying to do, and he tried, but in Bitcoin, we're really good at calling bullshit and memeing you to the root, as Tone puts. I like that, memeing you to the root. And, awesome. You're not going to be able to do but so much bullshit, and we're not going to tolerate it, and you're going to get called out. And so basically what he did is he tried to carve out his own little space in a niche, kind of in a space, to call so that he can be the alpha in that little space. Okay, so what do you do if you can't be the alpha in your space? Well, you make you make your own little sub sandbox, and you put your little flag in it. You say, hey, we're the king of this little space. So they say, oh yeah, well, by the way, we're really happy that we're the kings of the distributed ledger space, because the first time you ever heard distributed ledger space is from us. So we're already kings of it. Ha ha ha. So, so that's basically, it's just kind of like word playing and putting extra buzzwords. Whoa, great. So they have like a blockchain data bank thing, private, whatever. And they got like anyone disgruntled with Bitcoin Core, they kind of hired. Great. Good for you. I mean, I'm sure you can make something cool for your own use. I don't know if it'll survive in the long run or make you money, but you can say you have it. So then you're not totally irrelevant. But, that's basically all I have to say. I think it's a good meme. Distributed ledger space. I think I'm going to get some business cards made. Theo Goodman, blockchain developer, distributed ledger space, because I don't have to develop anything. I can just bullshit talk around, and I can I could get paid whatever. So I think I'm gonna forget. I can't even develop anything really. I can kind of copy and paste and hack around.
Scrolly.
Yeah, I'm just gonna make a scrolly website. Get some business cards that say distributed ledger space blockchain developer, and say 999 euro hour. Or 50 Bitcoin hour, your choice, then, I'll take 1,000 Litecoin. No, I'm just joking. Anyway, I don't know. I like the distributed ledger space thing. It just, what that shows is that I said earlier today, because scammers are attracted to value and innovation. Look at all scammers. Do they go to old stuff? No. Do they go to uninnovative things? No. Do they go to things without value? No. So, what you have here is an elaborate, it's not exactly a scam, but it's kind of like a, trying to repackage in our own way. And I kind of want to put it in that category as well a little bit. So all these, whenever you see people repackaging things really elaborately, that shows you that they want to get in, but they don't know how.
Very true. Very true. And yeah, I think, we really are, it's awesome that the community really does serve them back their own bullshit when they freaking try to dish it out to us, because we will catch it right away. The people in the Bitcoin space are usually really free thinkers, really try to understand things about the reality instead of just participate in it. They want to actually be a voice. And so a lot of people on Reddit and a lot of people, on Twitter, we're going to continue. And I encourage everybody to continue to please serve them back their own bullshit when they try to put that on our websites and our news sites and stuff. So definitely good comments from you guys all. We actually have almost 200 people viewing right now, if you can believe that. The numbers just keep going up. So just keep sharing it out. Let everybody see. We definitely have some Bitcoin industry heavyweights in here. So definitely tweet it out. If you guys have any questions, like Theo was saying, or Theo and Daniel, like they were saying, just put a /Q in the chat with your question, just a /Q right there, so we can put it on the left, and then they can be archived there nicely, so we can go back through them whenever we want. I don't really want to wait till the end of the show to answer people's questions, so whenever they pop up, I'll just try to find a spot where we can throw that in there. So definitely keep asking those questions, keep sharing the show, and we'll move on to the next topic. Let's see here, what do we got? Paste it into the chat. The next big topic here is Bitcoin startups face backlash for perceived pivots. So this is something that I thought was, again, just another hilarity coming in from the big banks and their propaganda on what they want to try to have people believe about Bitcoin. Chris, I'd like to hear your thoughts on this. You can go first.
So what was this in particular? Because I've got a few sort of companies that I have in mind that have pivoted, in particular like ChangeTip, who decided they're no longer a Bitcoin company, but now a dollar company.
That's exactly right. That's one. That's right. Exactly right. And that's the exact reason. That one, Uphold, which used to be a different name. A couple other ones, Circle. There are a bunch of these people.
Right, and the problem is that they're not. The reason is because they're terrible entrepreneurs, and I don't hold back in criticism because, frankly, they deserve it. And the fact is, that an entrepreneur should have the ability to anticipate demand in a market, and if they're any good at what they do, they should have the ability to de-risk an otherwise uncertain set of circumstances for another. Right. So if you're getting it wrong, if your product market fit isn't right, then why the fuck did you earn $2.5 million in the first place? Right, that's my question. If you've got to pivot, if you've suddenly realized, oh, actually, we can't be a Bitcoin company anymore, we've got to start doing dollars and all of this, well, then there was something wrong with your original plan. There was something fundamentally, strategically wrong. So these companies are set up by, somewhat independently wealthy, upper middle class people who have certain expectations on living standards and want to preserve those living standards as much as possible. And the only real path for them to do that is to go to a group of VCs and tell them how they can make their large stash of money even bigger. It's called Let's Make the Numbers Get Bigger game. And you have what's known as an investor story time. You go into a meeting like Shark Tank or like Dragon's Den in the UK here, like one of those TV shows. You're hold up in front of these investors, and you have to tell them a story that makes them believe in your hype, in your vaporware. Doesn't exist yet most times. The most valuable asset of any startup is not a product, it is a business plan. It is usually a PowerPoint presentation that has a hockey stick graph that goes up and to the right. Okay, and There are Excel spreadsheets that are doing the rounds, or Google spreadsheets that do the rounds. If you spend enough time in the industry, you'll get them. And you put in your little fabricated numbers of all your revenue expectations and all of this kind of stuff. And it turns those numbers into a hockey stick just by putting an exponent in there, just by doing the power. Okay. And then you can go to your investors and say, look, we're going to make lots and lots of money. And then they test you and they say, yeah, but why? But the truth is, the reason they invest in you isn't because you've got a good idea or because they believe in you or any of that stuff. It's really because they're buying into a theme. these investors are thematic investors. They invest in hype cycles. So they're looking at what's trendy. They're looking at what other VCs that usually are bigger than them, so-called lead investors, are investing in. And they will invest it if they think they can sell it on for a greater fall. To a greater fall. So if they think they can find a bigger idiot than them that's willing to buy it off of them, then that's what they do. And as a founder of one of these startups, you don't really have to produce revenue or profit. All you have to do is find another round of investors willing to give you more money so that you can go out and do your drugs and do whatever your lifestyle, what you want. You want to be a career holiday maker. A lot of these people just spend their whole time sucking pina coladas and like frappe lattes, as far as I can tell. They don't actually produce anything inventive or disruptive. They're just creating these little siloed databases. Now, when eventually they do run out of runway and they run out of money, what the VCs often do is they take inventory. They just close the company down. They take all the staff. They put the staff onto other companies and other things that they own. And of course, they take all the personal data of all of the customers on the database. And of course, those customers don't have a leg to stand on because they agreed to some terms and terms that are one-sided and asymmetric when they logged into the website. And suddenly you've got everyone's purchasing history. It's not even the money anymore that's valuable. It's what you spend your money on that's valuable. It's all the metadata that surrounds your spending habits that these companies are really interested in. So these startups are really just a conduit. They're just a vehicle for invading people's privacy and taking their data. And it's really the sort of, I call them the nice Germans, right? In the Second World War, the nice Germans were the ones that drove the trains and worked for the Ministry of Propaganda. And, just turned a blind eye, didn't really do anything. And that's what these entrepreneurs. They're just doing their job, right? That's what these entrepreneurs are doing. They're just doing their job. We're innovating. We're what's the term? We're lean.
We're just doing my job here on the show, man.
Yeah,
don't attack me.
But there's no thinking. There's no questioning. There's no thought about the externalities or what this might create longer term, right? I'm still greedy. I'm just greedy for a different kind of progress. I'm greedy for the long term. But all of this kind of short-termism where all we need to do is
fraud, Chris. We found you out. You're trying to make money on your DIY nodes. I'm sure you're making mega profit on that.
Yeah, I'm going to make it. I'm going to make obscenely small amounts of money on these Raspberry Pi nodes. But I'm greedy for a different kind of progress. I'm greedy for a decentralized network where people can enthusiastically get involved in the blockchain, not because of some mining reward or all these incentives. You keep hearing this word incentive in this space. I wish people would stop using it. Okay, it's not that it's not relevant. It's just that stop trying to pay people to do things they should do automatically. You find people that intrinsically are motivated to host a full node like I am. I host 12 full nodes in total. I'm not a wealthy person, okay? I'm actually dirt poor, but I've got, old laptops and old computers dotted around, in an office and in a friend's house and at my parents' place and all that kind of stuff, right? And I just leave them running, and every now and again I take a little bit of care of them and I upgrade them. And it's a hobby for me. I enjoy doing it. And there are lots of people out there that would enjoy doing it. And when you hand these Raspberry Pis to people, they're enamored by it, but they're bewitched by it. They're looking at it and they're thinking of the possibilities. And once they start playing, what I'm trying to get people to the point in this industry is, like, you've got to enjoy this. Like, you've got to understand why it's important. I want people to give up their fear of code and give up their fear of command line and actually, get your hands dirty, get involved, spend a weekend hacking around, and you will get addicted to this. Just like everybody else that gets into the space. Once you go into Bitcoin, you don't go back. That's it. It's a one-way street. And you'll never go back to that kind of startup centralized database, using Oracle or SQL or whatever. You'll never go back to that again, because that data, that personal data of yours, it either belongs to you or it belongs to the commons. It belongs to everybody. What you can't have is this asymmetric information imbalance where a few private corporations just capture all the personal information for themselves and then profit off it for as long as they can until eventually the databases get hacked, like Patreon got hacked and all the data got leaked out of there. Eventually it will all be public. My view is
that other company that got hacked where you cheat on your girlfriend or whatever.
Oh yeah.
What's
the name of that? It was a website where you would go, where men and women would go specifically to find Ashley Madison. Yeah,
right. All that stuff gets hacked. That's right. So I don't want to interrupt, but yeah, you're right. All that stuff gets hacked. So
yeah, it's absolutely hilarious, and Chris, the beautiful thing about Bitcoin is that you don't even have to be a coder. I mean, maybe you're a designer and you like beautiful bubblegum interfaces and you want to be able to slap some interfaces on some software that people are passionate about building their code on. And so, and then people can get together, and we have things like GitHub where hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people can come together and create open source, amazing software solutions instead of taking these VC deals just to prop up their middle, class lifestyle, as Chris put it. The way I like the way you put that. And it's just absolutely ridiculous. Find your passion. There's going to be something about Bitcoin that's going to trigger one of your passions. You're going to find your passion in Bitcoin. If you don't have a passion yet, maybe it's not designing, maybe it's not programming, maybe it's not crowdsourcing, maybe it's not doing a TV show, whatever it is, there will be something for you in there, because this Bitcoin really is the planet. You might as well just replace the word Bitcoin with planet Earth, because this involves everybody. It's for everybody. And this is really the future. So Daniels, I need to have your opinion on this, man. What do you think about this craziness?
I'm not sure how I feel.
Backlash pivots. Sorry,
I'm not sure how I feel about going after Chris, because I'll never
Right?
be able to top him. But
Nobody can, dude. Nobody can. That's why I'm the host, and I just have you guys on.
I would distinguish between two different kinds of pivots, and maybe they only mean one of them, but I think it's worth talking about both. The first one is to pivot from Bitcoin to dollars, and that's what some of these guys. I remember a pretty good friend of mine has just started getting into Bitcoin over the past couple months, and I remember him going on Circle, and he couldn't find anything about Bitcoin when he was looking at Circle. It doesn't even say the word Bitcoin there, and I would I would pretty much agree with Chris there. It's just a terrible business idea, a terrible plan. I wouldn't say they're directly hurting anyone. I mean, it's their own mistake, and eventually they're going to suffer for it. So I wouldn't really necessarily say they're doing anything wrong. I mean, even with the privacy issues, they're still not quite forcing you to give up privacy or whatever. I mean, you have to do it to use the service, but they're not making you use the service and things like that. So I wouldn't necessarily say they're doing anything straight up just terrible, evil, and wrong. But yeah, why? This is not where the best way. This is not where the world is going. We already talked about how banks are going away, and just they're going to have that Uber moment and whatever. So like Chris said, why would you put your money into the old stuff and try and patch it up and whatever? Why not just stick with Bitcoin? That's what I would say about that. And then the other kind of pivot would be, from just Bitcoin to maybe more general crypto, maybe blockchain, maybe that kind of stuff. And I would say that's kind of gray area. It can vary a lot. Sometimes you could work on something that's great and helpful. And sometimes you could pivot to something that's kind of crypto. They say it's crypto, but it's really not, and you might be wasting your time the same way there. So
absolutely spot on. Very good points on there. There's definitely probably a couple pivots they're talking about. I'm all over the internet. They've really kind of focused on, I think, pivoting from Bitcoin to dollars. And what's funny is that all of these websites, Uphold, ChangeTip, all of them, they all still support Bitcoin. All of them still support Bitcoin. They're just expanding. I argued on CoinDesk on the chat or on the comments that basically it's not a pivot, it's an expansion. And this overall expansion is good for consumers in general. It's good for getting more people into Bitcoin. So, because again, somebody might go on there and they just need to use dollars right now. And then all of a sudden one day they're going to notice, what's this Bitcoin option? What's Bitcoin? And then that will send them down the path. So I really think that expanding into dollars is the way to go. Is going to get us where we need to go. Obviously, dollars have their days numbered, but we need to get regular people into this Bitcoin system. People, we need to get regular Joes in here using Bitcoin and using it, because not just using it, but using it and knowing why they're using it. When you hand a dollar over to Starbucks coffee, the average person has no idea that that's a blood-soaked dollar, probably has cocaine residue in it and such like that. People who use Bitcoin, they know I'm using Bitcoin, so I am using a free world currency. I am using a currency that's not used to fund drugs. I am using a currency that's not used to fund war. I'm using a currency that's not used to kill people. So I think that this expansion is definitely good. Theo, let me hear your thoughts, man. What do you think?
Okay, so this is about the so-called pivots that are going on. I mean, yeah, businesses got to do what they got to do. Businesses got a business, right? So if their business plan was really bad to begin with, then sure, they got to pivot. Whoops. You're not going to be able to, I don't know, whatever, collect fees or users or data, how you were. And they noticed that and they said, oh no, we got to maybe change or wait a minute, this Bitcoin thing, I don't know. Everyone's saying, some people are even saying blockchain, not Bitcoin. So I want to cover all our bases here. So let's not be, let's negate our risk here and make sure that we're not too much anything. Let's just not take any, let's make sure we're covering everything possible and not be anything while doing that. So it really depends. On the other hand, BitPay, for example, after a lot of let me go back. Let me just tell you how it happened. Some of these articles came out about these so-called pivots, and then I would have what you would call bear raider trolls going around Telegram and other chattery areas where the Bitcoin community is active, saying, yeah, look at this, see, the price is going down, this is all bullshit, everyone's pivoting, Bitcoin's over, no one, all these companies are distancing themselves, see, I told you. And they've got their bear hat on. Then they think, oh yeah, this whole thing to 500. I told you that was unhealthy. This is bullshit. See, look, these companies are confirming my bearish bias here. So, and then, and I said, okay, well that's interesting, but you know what? They had bad business plans to begin with, so I'm not really surprised that they're pivoting. So who cares? That's actually good. And then BitPay gets on Twitter and is like, we're not pivoting. We support the white paper. We support Bitcoin. So I don't know what you guys are talking about, but somebody, as we had already once this time with the good clickable titles, wrote a really nice title, a really clickbaity title, Bitcoin companies distancing themselves from the real deal, and everyone clicked it. And if you have a bias that confirms that, then you're going to spread that like crazy. And that's a good way to go viral. So they were really, the media is really good at doing that. And they manufactured this kind of discussion a little bit. Now, we already made fun of Uphold a lot on World Crypto Network, so I'm not going to go into that more. But, whatever. If you want to pivot, then you can pivot. That's fine. How you want. But I think a lot of it is just kind of insecurity, kind of like, okay, well, wait a minute. We were a Bitcoin company, but now we want to be a blockchain company, and we want to have fiat too. So we want to be able to fit into all molds possible because we don't want to take a risk, which I understand, but I think it's just, they weren't really secure to begin with. What it is, also, my final point is that what it boils down to is this. From the end of 2013 to the beginning of 2014, when a lot of these companies started, all you had to do was make some kind of company or website and put Bitcoin on it, and you were profitable. It didn't matter. Okay?
It's like the old
and then
days.
Right. And a lot of them started then, and they're like, wait a minute, it's a year after, and our up-ramp budget is going away. What do we do? So then they start panicking and they do all kinds of weird stuff. They change their names and they do, I don't know what. So I think that's part of it.
Definitely. And, again, I just don't think it's bad that they're going to add dollars. We know that the Bitcoin space isn't big enough to sustain a world global economy yet. But I tell you, all the signs are there of it moving there. And so in order to get more people on there, we have to expand into native currencies. People need to be able to exchange their dollars for Bitcoin, Bitcoin for dollars, and so on and so forth. So again, to all the trolls out there, Bitcoin, nobody's pivoting away from Bitcoin. They are expanding their services. That is all. So that's the end of that topic. We have over 260 people now viewing. So absolutely thank you guys for sharing and for telling your friends and for getting in here. We're having a pretty good, lively discussion about Bitcoin, this week's Bitcoin news. We've got everybody in here from Chris to Daniel to Theo. Thanks again, guys, for joining. It's been great so far. I'm having a great time. Hope you guys are too, and the audience as well. I'm going to go on to the next topic here. Let's see what we got. Next topic coming down. It's going to be 4 reasons why banks' private blockchains will fail. So we're going to talk a little bit about private blockchains right now. Chris, need your thoughts, please. What do you think?
I would actually echo what Andreas Antonopoulos said on the AMA the other day on Bitcoin. It was at bitcoin.com. I forget the domain name, but the Bitcoin forum. Yeah. And he said that the private blockchains are good for Bitcoin because it means that we get more investment into development and research into this technology, the distributed ledger system. Let me fill you in. Basically, a blockchain is something called a linked list in computer science. It's just an array. It's a list of digital objects that are tied to each other. What was novel about Satoshi's design was that he introduced the concept of digital scarcity, which we hadn't had before. That the internet was a stateless, well, it's not stateless. There is some stateful systems, obviously, with HTML, but TCP/IP is a stateless system. It doesn't retain its prior state, and as a result, you had a concept of the universe that didn't match the underlying reality of the universe. The internet gave rise to an overabundance, and so this idea that you can spin up your own private blockchain, I would say the word private is probably the wrong word. I would say the word permission is a more accurate description. So yes, I can see a use case, particularly with a company like Eris. Full disclosure, they did sponsor me for 6 months earlier this year, but I'm not being paid by them now. I was eventually persuaded by Eris and by Casey and the developers there that were really hardcore techs and geeks and worked on Ethereum. Yes, okay, I can see a scenario where a small group of people, maybe a small nation state or a group of friends even, want to get together and bootstrap their own database. You know, the blockchains have certain properties that are interesting. Like, for example, you just need the Genesis block and a signed copy of the open source code, and you can start bootstrapping and connecting to peers through the DNS seed, and you can start building your database. You can't do that with SQL. Now, there's another argument, which is that these private blockchains are an incredibly inefficient way of sharing data between a private group of people. Why not just use a sharded, fragmented database? Just use a regular Oracle-based centralized database and just have it fragmented and timestamp it. Just checkpoint it into the Bitcoin blockchain. Exactly. Well, you lose some of the auto-poetic properties of Bitcoin. Remember that the Bitcoin and things like Ethereum are state transition systems, that they move on their own esteem, because there's always an opportunity for people to mine on them. Because mining, the real threshold to mining is just buying a miner. As I demonstrated, you can actually do that for about £15. Anyone can engage. This is an HR, it's an innovation of human resources. At the moment, if you want to timestamp and transition the state of the legacy financial system, you have to go get a job at a bank, which means that you have to have a degree, you have to have gone to university, they require lots of other things. Then you have to look like the kind of person they would hire, which means you've got to wear a suit, you've got to go to an interview, you've got to answer a load of questions before you can even sign off on the transfer of some numbers from this ledger over to that ledger, right? And then all you're doing is it's a debt-based system. Because then all you're doing is making one bank go into debt from one person and making a bank go into debt over here to another person. That's all you're really doing. You're just transferring debt. There is no debt in Bitcoin. You can't have any negative balances on a blockchain. It only affords positive balances. And all you're really doing is reassigning ownership. The Bitcoins don't really travel anywhere. So look, it does have some properties that are interesting. And I could see some use cases for a company like Eris or one of these other private blockchain. But I would say that the word to use isn't private, it's permission. Like, yes, I give you permission to access this data store, this particular array. Yeah, I can see it. But then, you know, again, Andreas, I can't say it better, so I'll just quote him. It's a bit like in 1992 saying that intranets are going to be the next big thing. Right, let's have our own private internet. Let's not, share it for everyone. I agree that intranets are interesting. I just don't think they're the most interesting thing about this space. And if you're really honest with yourself, even if you are, like Ethereum or one of these things, and you're saying that you can build private blockchains on our system, what you're really doing is riding the gravy train. You're backing a trend, and you're picking something because it looks good. In fact, there's a really good song by Pink Floyd, which I absolutely love from the album with Wish You Were Here. And it's come in here, dear boy, have a cigar. You're going to go far. You're going to fly high. You're never going to die. They're going to love you. And it's all about salesmen going up to the band members of Pink Floyd and telling them how they'll make them famous. And then I love that line in the song where he says, and by the way, I love the band. That's really what I think. And by the way, which one's Pink? He doesn't even know that they're named after a famous jazz musician. Well, he should if he's working in the music industry. And of course, the point that they're trying to make, Pink Floyd are trying to make with the lyrics of that song, is that these people don't care. They don't care about their industry. They're not passionate. They never really did pursue their passion as children. They got to a certain age. They bought whatever lies their parents told them. They bought all the misunderstandings that the education system gave them, and they sold out. And they gave up on their dreams, and they don't know how to ask for help. They don't.
I think Chris is stuck.
Have I gone?
Oh, sorry. Are you back? Okay.
I'm back.
Maybe that was my internet, or if it was your internet, I'm sorry.
No, you were glitching a little bit, just at the end
well,
there. But we got the gravy train thing. That's important. We got the gravy train. Get on the gravy train now.
Listen to that track. Listen to Have a Cigar. The track is called Have a Cigar, and it's from the album Wish You Were Here.
Pink Floyd. Everybody needs to listen to Pink Floyd right now anyway. I mean, that's just an absolutely great band. Obviously, I mean, every father of every friend I ever know, absolutely recommends that. And everybody needs to listen to Pink Floyd. They had a lot of insightful information. Daniel, would you like to take a stab at this topic?
Yeah. Gosh, it's funny. We kind of over the summer and a little bit more recently, my co-hosts and I started to kind of hate this topic because it would come up all the time, and we just kind of beat it to death trying to just talk through it and think about it. I think the conclusion that I basically came to was have a bank with a blockchain. Yeah, of course, it's a bank. Like it's not really gonna fix the bank, but it's also not gonna hurt it. It's not gonna be worse for us if the bank has the blockchain, a permissioned kind of private whatever blockchain, because with even the issue with the permission blockchain is some people can do transactions on their own or whatever, and they have superpowers, whatever. So and that's already what it is. That's all. The system is already just based on permissions, so it's not really going to get worse. And also, like Chris said, there could be some aspects that might be some fringe benefits. I would say that this is unlikely, but maybe it could be a little bit transparent. Maybe some people around will be able to see some things in the blockchain, and that's better than what we have now. And so, so I don't think it's going to be any worse than what it is now, and there could be some fringe benefits. Is what I would say about banks having their own blockchains. But long term, I'll this might be the third time I'm saying this, but yeah, no question about it. The banks are old, they're rusty, and before long they're not going to have any purpose. So,
absolutely. The private blockchain, I think that like Chris was saying, they're just intranets. They're intranets. People are going to think they're the next big thing now, but eventually we will realize that the intranet is absolutely worthless without the internet. We need the internet to connect all the intranets together, to keep the intranets honest almost, to make sure that, hey, when we connect to the public, you can see my email. I can verify that I sent you an email by looking over the public internet as well as the internet.
I just want to add something. So the internet is a network of networks, and that it was invented by a guy called Vint Cerf, among others, who had the philosophical concept that the universe is a system made up of systems inside of systems, and that if you were going to organize the structure of information on the planet, that you needed a data hierarchy that resembled the underlying nature of the universe itself. In other words, that it had systems inside of systems. So whatever network the internet touches, it liberates. And it raises the marginal cost of keeping that data private. That's why we have the concept of air gaps in operational security. When you air gap something on something like a disk like this, and you physically root out any Wi-Fi or any Bluetooth hardware in your device, like you can on the Raspberry Pi, it's completely customizable. You prevent like a physical air gap for anyone getting that data. So, but if something's got a persistent internet connection, you're going to have to spend a lot of money on information security in protecting that data, and that cost is going to go up because it's actually a function of time. The longer it's on the internet, the more of a chance there is of that data eventually becoming a...
Very true. Awesome point, Chris. Thanks for that. Theo, I'd like to hear your version of this.
About
private blockchains. What do you think?
Private blockchains. Well, I think private blockchains are a good entry point into the distributed ledger space. And if you want to get started in the distributed ledger space, then a good start would be going with a private blockchain, and then maybe you can upgrade, and then you can say you're part of the distributed ledger space. I think we've already discussed it even today. I think it really has to do, of course, I mean, you could get into the technical parts, and is there a benefit or is there not a benefit? It's arguable. I mean, it is kind of a shared database, and you already have that. And whether you really need a blockchain, private blockchain or not, well, I don't know. That's up to you and your company. And, sure, you can do some things that are a little bit more transparent, and probably you could, if you get really good at it, you could probably do away with a few employees. So, that's pretty much what it boils down to, in my opinion. You could probably do that. But more importantly, like I said before, you can say that you have a blockchain thing. As long as you can say, you're a company, you say, hey, yeah, we have one of those blockchain things. See? And you're like, oh, yeah, that's like Bitcoin, right? Yeah, it is. It's like Bitcoin. We have one of those. Then you're relevant still. So the idea is remain relevant, reduce risk, and don't do anything dangerous, and don't lose control. So then it's a good move to do something blockchain oriented, because then you can say, hey, we have it too. So I think a lot of this private blockchain stuff has to do with that. And, the HR departments and the guys high up are like, hey, wait a minute, this is kind of efficient in a weird way. I think I see a return on investment. We could probably do away with a few employees if we do this well. So I think that's also part of it too. I mean, maybe some smart contract does away with a few employees in the end. Who knows? Like I said, I don't know their business in and out, but I could see that happening. So let's see where this goes.
I can tell you one thing for sure. All of that money saved from transferring money, from using smart contracts, from eliminating staff, all of that money saved will not be passed on to the consumer. If you think it's going to be passed on to the consumer, then you just don't know banks, and you don't know how their protocols work.
Well, they're already under pressure. I mean, they are have to save even with SEPA, so Standard European, whatever the hell, blah blah blah. They basically had to reduce their rates because there's only one rate for transfers in Europe. So a lot of banks so they just raised the rates and other aspects of their business. I mean, of course, right? I mean, that's the same thing. That's the same I mean, we could get into a whole nother big discussion, but I'll throw it out there. That's a similar fallacy with minimum wage, unfortunately, that happens sometimes, because where do you think these people are going to raise? I think they're just going to take that. They're not going to take that. They'll just raise it somewhere else. Eventually, you'll feel it. So in any case,
exactly. And that's why I love the Bitcoin space, because right off the bat, most Bitcoin merchants give you a discount if you use Bitcoin because they don't have to worry about things like chargebacks. Because of the advantages of Bitcoin that they use, they immediately pass it on to the consumer. And I think that's just absolutely great. So if you're, a merchant using Bitcoin, definitely try to discount it a little bit on the rest of your products, because Bitcoin, as we know, the price will go up. It will go up, and you can't really stop that. It's pretty much like the sun. You really can't
Going to
stop
the
it.
moon, ladies and gentlemen. You heard it
Going
here
to the
first.
moon. Okay,
Going up.
I'm telling you right
Going
now.
up. No, I don't know if it's going to go up. I don't know
We
if it's
all
going to
know-
go up. I'm not willing to say that, but
Okay,
yeah,
well, I'm willing to
but
say
you
that.
can
I'll
give.
say that for
Yeah,
you.
sure. You're going to have less fees, in general, than other things. So you could offer a discount, maybe. I see what you're saying, where you're going with that.
For sure. Before we move on to the next topic, just want to say, I think I have the viewers and the total views mixed up. So I thought we had like 300 viewers. We have over 308 views, but I think we have only 50 people or so in the chat. And if
Yeah.
that's true, we've had then
Yeah.
if that's true, we've had about 50 to 60 people average then
Yeah,
in here. the whole
and
time.
ladies and for you guys, just say, we also have Sean has been here a lot of the time. He's the CEO of Blab. So hi, Sean. Thanks for hanging out
Oh wow.
and giving us
Awesome.
some questions. So they're pretty cool here at Blab, and they'll come into their own stuff
The
and ask
CEO?
questions. Yeah,
That's
sure.
cool.
Here on the side, he asks questions. See hypothetically
Oh, that's-
what
I didn't-
scenario and
That's
so on.
awesome.
So that's pretty cool. And we also have other people in the audience. Thanks everyone for coming, Eric and everyone else, Tone, and all the other
Yep.
people. That's really cool.
My family and girlfriend is watching, so that's awesome. Everybody's here. So before we move on to the next topic, first I just want to get this question out of the way over here on the side from looks like Dave Henderson. Chris, would you supply a full node hardware unassembled with a nifty little instruction video for those of us who like to tinker?
There will be an instruction video in any case. So whether or not you want me to just supply you with the equipment or tell you where to buy it from or tell you where I got it from, yes, of course, more than
Okay,
more
awesome.
than happy to.
Awesome. Yeah. People have to remember, this is not being made in China by some faceless corporation. This is being made by Chris Ellis by hand for the price of a Chinese corporation. So you guys really got to get on this deal, and we'll have Chris give more details at the end of the show as well about it. But before we move on to the next topic, I just want to see Chris health-wise. Just wondering how you're doing, if you're good for a few more minutes or not. If you need to bug out anytime soon.
I am actually very sensitive to sound, so unfortunately my voice gives me a very bad headache. But I'm really enjoying this, and so it's important.
Awesome. Well, really appreciate it. The people appreciate it. I certainly appreciate it as a fan, as a Bitcoin community member. The advice that you give out here, I mean, it's been absolutely fantastic. You definitely, as Daniel said, nobody wants to follow you, Chris, because everything that you said is pretty much so spot on. We can't say.
Well, no, I would actually say that you should definitely counter me. Like I don't want to be like one of the. I don't have fans, by the way, and can we dispel that? Because these are people that are friends. It's gotten to the point now where I have so many friends that I haven't met before that it looks like I'm like one of these internet celebrities. But I don't want that to happen. If we haven't met yet and you follow me on Twitter, it's just that we're friends that haven't met yet. That's how people should be thinking about it. And I really appreciate, all the people that reach out to me and send me emails and DMs. And so please continue to do that and challenge me. If I talk shit and say something wrong, you should say it, because I want you to keep me honest.
Awesome. So that's great. Well, let's see if we can move on then to the next topic. We pasted into the chat. So yeah, looks like using the blockchain to reinvent the music business. I definitely have a few points I'd like to say in here, but first I'm going to pass it on over to Chris first. I don't know if you got this chance to see this article or not, or maybe got any chance to read up on it, but I was wondering if you could comment on it at all, how the blockchain is going to influence the music industry in the future and how it's doing so now.
So I haven't read that article in particular, but I was there when Imogen Heap hosted the hackathon a couple of months ago now, and she really liked ProTip, and the people that she works with, her colleagues, really liked it. And so straight away on the day of the hackathon, it was an Ethereum hackathon, ironically enough. And my colleague of mine, Francesco, wrote something called the Blockchain Pen, which allows you to timestamp into the Bitcoin blockchain your claim on copyright of ownership of, or the moral rights of the copyright on to a particular artwork. And obviously, Imogen being a musician, the use case came up about music. And so when I demonstrated ProTip alongside Francesco's blockchain pen, you had quite a nice symbiotic relationship between a copyright solution, which is what a lot of musicians are worried about. They're not just worried about income. They're also worried about people passing off their work as their own. There are already a number of centralized timestamping institutions within the creative business in the music industry, but Imogen has to pay them a fee, quite a large fee to timestamp her work, so that if she ever wants to bring a claim of plagiarism, or if someone covers her work and changes, I don't want to speak for her, okay, so I'm speaking for all musicians now, but if anyone takes your work and alters the arrangement of that work, in the UK at least, they have to ask your permission. If you don't change the arrangement, you don't have to ask permission, but you do have to pay royalties. So there's a whole apparatus that is set up. The music industry isn't just there to take money away from the talent that produces the work, even though it may seem like that at times. There is a genuine need for it, but a lot of this stuff can be coded away. And a lot of this stuff can just be automated in the code. And this is what Francesco realized. This is what I realized. And remember that what Francesco has done, and also look up another website called eternitywall.it. That's another sort of Twitter-like timestamping tool. It's got the good sort of user interface that looks like Twitter, but you can put these messages in the blockchain so they are uncensorable. And what this does is it changes the nature of our information system from being one of replace to append only. If you want to change the state of the universe now, you have to add to it. You can't delete and remove and undo. There is no backspace, there's no command Z, there's none of that, right? You can only add to it. So the answer to freedom of speech is not censorship, it's more speech. You have to add more and more layers of nuance. And, Audre Lorde, quoting her now, your silence will not protect you. Right? Just by, if you think you're being quiet and you think that's going to save you because you're not saying anything, you're not disrupting anything, you're not going to be protected. And the blockchain gives everybody a voice. Even if you don't have any money or you have very little money, anyone can produce a public-private key pair. But Bitcoin does not need money for you to be able to create a public-private key pair. You can sign things with your address, and now you have the ability to start receiving money. You have the ability to be discovered. And this isn't about Taylor Swift or even Imogen Heap. This is about all the other artists that don't get the chance to be at that level of success, not because they don't have the merit, but because they don't have the marketing, because they don't have the management. But we're now dealing with a world that is many to many, and you don't need, I'm a big Taylor Swift fan. Of course, she's a legend in the information security space, as well as being a famous country western singer and pop star. But what's not to like here? That doesn't mean that you won't have those mega celebrities. The word celebrity just comes from the word celebrate. It's just a celebration of somebody's existence. But what it does mean is that you will have a much lower barrier to entry into that market, that now you're going to have to work harder at staying at the top. It'll be much easier for you to get to the top than it will be to stay there, because you're always going to have to watch your back. You're always going to have to be on your edge. And that keeps the artist honest, because it keeps them on their toes and it keeps them producing good work, which is also good for consumers and appreciators of art, audience members, because then they get a spectacle. We turn up to witness talent. We turn up to witness greatness. That's why these football stadiums fill up to the brim. It's why these music concerts are so successful. Taylor Swift makes more money in concert tours than she does selling records or putting stuff on Spotify. And whilst we're on the point of royalties, Imogen Heap made more money using ProTip than she would have done if she'd released it on Spotify. Partly that was because, there was a whole bunch of furore around it, using it. But it proves that, a very modest app with two people working out of their bedrooms and in their kitchens can produce something that is free, open source software that can work right now for everybody. And all you've got to do is put a Bitcoin address in your work, either on your web page that's loose. You don't need any widgets. You don't need any coding experience. You just copy paste your Bitcoin address into the description of your YouTube videos or your SoundCloud, or inside of the metadata. Eventually we will get around to being able to read that metadata. The next thing that the music industry has to do is it has to come up with a schema or an open standard that everyone agrees on, on the method of timestamping. So as soon as you finish composing your work, you need to timestamp that before you put it on the internet, because once it's on the internet, anyone can then timestamp it and claim that they made it. And then you've got to go back through your notes, you've got to go to a judge, and you've got to get mediation involved. But if you timestamp the work in the studio before it's been released in its master state, you will have a reference, the internet's own nomenclature, the internet's own naming convention. You'll have a SHA-256 hash that will prove that you are the owner, because it will be the earliest instantiation of the proof of that work. And no one will be able to produce a timestamp that comes prior. So you will be de facto. That will go a hell of a long way in court if anyone ever bothered to try to take you to court claiming that you copied their work. People just wouldn't bother. But that requires educating people. It brings us back to the first point we started discussing. Education is hard. And really what this is about, really the strategy that I'm trying to promote, is to get other people that would otherwise be enthusiastic about this anyway, rather than trying to sell it to the mainstream, get enthusiasts and people that would otherwise be interested in this, but if only they knew about it, and then let them, do the selling or do the promotion and get other people, because really it's about helping them to understand why this is so important. It's a global horizon that everyone can share. Everyone can see this blockchain. No one can disagree. As Peter Todd says, it democratizes access to the truth, right? It gives everybody access to the truth, even when they're sleeping at night. They wake up in the morning, you know that the blockchain wasn't forked overnight, because it's designed that way. It is designed to reward honesty more than fraud, which is 180 degrees different to all the way we structure our institutions at the moment. So yes, I think that music will be the first industry to do it, because music is the one art form that can't hurt people. It's a non-violent form of art. It's very difficult to hurt someone with music unless you're a particularly bad violinist or drummer or something of this nature. And as a result, I think that music has the ability to transcend borders. It can cross across boundaries like a spirit walking through walls. And it's part of what precipitated the downfall of the Berlin Wall. Look at all the nightclubs that were emerging. I watched a really good independent film in London about the way these sort of underground nightclubs emerged at just before the fall of the Berlin Wall in East Germany, because people wanted to share in this music, and all the prejudices of East versus West, all of that went away because they all appreciated the music, and they were watching the music videos. There were bootlegs coming into the Soviet bloc, and people were seeing the lifestyles of the people living in the West, and they were wondering, well, what act of circumstance do I get deprived of this lifestyle? Is it just by virtue of me being here? This circumstance is nothing but an accident, right? So why am I deprived of this? This doesn't feel just to me. And for me, yeah, music is perfect. Even in Estonia, when it had its revolution, it was called the singing revolution, right? So music absolutely has the ability to move people. It blinds us to the world around us, and it actually conjures vision. It gives us a vision that is different to the world that is in front of us, and that gives rise to imagination and originality and creativity. So yes, I think music will probably be the first use case for this technology, just like Napster.
Absolutely, and I really pity anybody who has to follow up to that, Daniel. No, real quick. Sorry, I'm gonna say something real quick. But absolutely, Chris. What I really found. One of the millions of things that I really find so fascinating about Bitcoin is that it is the ultimate truth. And me and you, Chris, had a tweet exchange about this once, about how I think that the Bitcoin network really represents truth. And you said something, I forget, I don't know if you remember, but you said something pretty clever, that how it relates to truth. I don't know if you can remember that, but it was absolutely, very insightful.
So this was Godama, right? And the Bitcoin core developers were struggling to define consensus. And I said that they needed to read Godama. So Godama defined consensus as that which cannot be disputed even in the presence of misunderstanding. I'm misquoting it slightly. But basically, if I say that the sky is pink, what's true is not whether or not the sky is pink. What's true is that I made a claim about something called the sky. That is the consensus. And the more we come to blows over whether or not the sky is blue or pink, the more we reaffirm and prove and validate that I made the claim. So the consensus gets stronger in the presence of conflict, because he says that as we start to argue about the color of the sky, we continue to add more and more proof that I made the claim about the sky in the first place, that there is such an entity as the sky, that there is such a property as color. that we can argue about it, that we're speaking a language, that we're in a shared culture, so that's the definition of consensus, something which cannot be denied even in the presence of misunderstanding, right? So you can misunderstand what the word blockchain means, and you can misunderstand what Bitcoin means, but Bitcoin doesn't require your belief or your understanding in order to work. When you load it up, it just works. You don't have to believe in the damn thing. It just does its thing. It would be much better if you did understand it, because then you're more in control and you can't be taken advantage of, and nobody can dupe you, and it'll be more difficult for somebody to steal from you. But yeah, so that's what that's not the definition of truth. In philosophy, of course, we would distinguish between truth, and truth is something that stands on the other side of time. So truth takes time to reveal. Time stands in for truth in many senses. And if you want to go with something like, the subjective reality of truth, like Kierkegaardian, like, truth is repetition, or it's seeing things over and over again, you can look to Kierkegaard. You can also look to, obviously, Descartes as the founder of modern philosophy, where he states the only thing we can be sure of is that we are thinking. And also I would urge audience members to read the work of Karl Popper too, and Thomas Kuhn, 20th century philosophers of science, who really elaborated on truth. And science, of course, is a distributed medium of storytelling. It's a way of, forming a hypothesis and then attempting to disprove or disprove through a series of controlled experiments, and then getting somebody to repeat it in another location so that we can prove the truth condition of this hypothesis or not, as the case may be. So yeah, truth is not the same as consensus, and hopefully I've given you enough citations there that you can go away and look it up for yourself.
Wonderful, absolutely wonderful. I will definitely try to read those books. I hope the audience definitely listens to it, because as you can see, this, ladies and gentlemen, this guy definitely speaks with passion. When you can tell that he's not going to be throwing you for a loop. So if he says something, it represents the truth, then you need to really need to listen up. Daniel, tell me, what do you think about this whole music on the blockchain thing? Do you think it's going to revolutionize music in the way that Chris describes? Do you think we can actually get away from a bunch of middlemen? And what do you think?
I think it is absolutely beautiful, honestly. I mean, my co-host has his Bitcoin in the Arts show, and he's talked about little things like this project and a few others like it. It's amazing. I mean, I don't know the specifics of this project itself. So, I don't know if it's going to be the final one. I don't know if there's things that could be better or anything. But the concept and the idea is beautiful, I think. I completely agree with Chris. Music is incredibly powerful, and it would be huge to have a better kind of documentation and better crediting for whose work goes into it. Actually, another form of art that I was just thinking about this today, because I'm a little slightly embarrassingly in love with The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. And just today, I watched like another 3 hours of special features for the very last the Hobbit movie, and I remember thinking, first of all, it's just mind-boggling how much work they put into this art. Absolutely mind-boggling how many hundreds and hundreds of people. Somebody will spend hours, spinning webs and throwing dust around a dungeon, fake webs and fake dust around a dungeon that might be on screen for 15 seconds, or it might never be there. They'll spend hours building swords, beautiful swords for the actors to use and everything. So I am a huge fan of art. I think it's absolutely amazing to see how many people contribute to art. That was filmed, but in music, I'm sure it's the same way. And then one last thing that I was thinking, not directly related, but I remember thinking this. I looked up some stats. This is one movie, and obviously there's hundreds of movies a year, probably. This movie, I think the budget was like 150 million or 180 million, and it grossed like $1 billion for one of those 6 movies. hundreds of people put effort into it, actors, producers, even just kind of workers, set managers, whatever. And yet every day people, this much money and effort and coordination goes into a film, and yet every day people want to tell us that nobody would spend money on a road to get to work and to go see their friends and to do whatever they want to do in life. I mean, it's absurd. So anyway, I love art. I think it's great to have this kind of crediting system so you can see what all went into it. And even better than if you can link that to a smart contract, which could, pay more fairly, pay the people that contributed to it, more transparently pay them, more voluntarily work out all kinds of stuff. It's beautiful, and I can't wait till it explodes.
Awesome. Great commentary, Daniel. I agree too. I think that, it's not just for the music industry. I mean, this is really for the entertainment industry. Really, this is for anything that was centralized before, anything that had gatekeepers before, so the music industry, huge gatekeepers, the movie industry, huge gatekeepers, and almost anything where we look in society in this day and age, everything is really centralized because we just didn't know how to do decentralization prior to 2008. So when I think of, just like you said, all the people and all the millions of people in this world that don't get credit for songs, for movies, and for various other types of art, it definitely weighs heavy on me because I really do believe that the blockchain can help alleviate some of this slack and help really get the movie industry and the music industry back on track, to where we can have an actual maybe a distributed system, almost like Netflix, where it's Netflix for everything. It's not. I'm not talking about something illegal like popcorn time, but I'm talking about the industry getting together and really figuring out this rights issue, really figuring out how we can get the best content to everybody the cheapest way possible while honoring the content creators. So,
I think that's absolutely right. I would say you can't really blame them for being centralized because, in the past, it especially with movies, it takes a ton of money. It takes a ton of coordination and everything. So you can't really, and actually one of the beautiful things about it, which I didn't even mention, but I'm sure there's some state involvement in whatever studios these are, but for the most part, it's completely the free market. I mean, you don't pay taxes to Fox, 21st Century Fox, or anything like that. It's completely free market. But you are absolutely right. It is still huge. They are still kind of limiting and kind of behemoths that can be slow and everything. And it's just it's you can't really blame them for it, but it is a problem that needs to be solved, just like we did with money and with Bitcoin. It's centralized, so let's look for the problems, let's solve the problems, and let's make it so that everyone can take part, can create movies, can take part in music, anything like that.
Awesome. Theo, I always hate to bring you last, man, because you have just as much interesting stuff to say as everybody else, but you are on the bottom right-hand corner. So,
are you discriminating against me? Am I being discriminated? No, it's all good.
I'm discriminating against you.
No, it's okay. It's okay. Actually, I agree. That's interesting. So Will just came in. Hey, what's up, Will in China? And he says people are getting used to paying before it's made. I hope so, because actually a lot of what we're talking about as far as internet and content, music, film, text, it doesn't really matter what, or artwork, it doesn't really matter what it is. You know what? We're going to have to pay for it. But now we can pay directly, or at least more directly, to the people that get it. Yeah, exactly. And anything else like it. So that's the whole thing that's different. But because we've been kind of in this world where we're used to free services, where we get things, quote, free, in exchange for our data, then we're not really used to that. So it's going to take time for us to adjust. And then we're kind of like in that transaction because transitioning, excuse me, because or whatever. Anyway, because actually a lot of those platforms and stuff, they're not really making money either. And they're basically like, oh shit, what do we do? Yeah, what do we do? What do we do? Oh no, what do we do? So I think they're going to have their quote Uber moment before the banks do, for sure. And basically, since the MP3 came out, since that, you couldn't really make money just releasing albums unless you were gigantic. You had to only make your money on tour. Just like, and now even the big guys are basically making their money doing tours and really big events rather than just the sales. Well, okay, fair enough, whatever, but it's just a different dynamic. Okay, as far as blockchain and music and all that, what I have to say about that is that, of course, I like all the ideas. I've even talked to some people that say, hey, you're into, how do we do this? What do I do? And I say, oh, yeah, well, there's kind of this thing. So there's not really an easy solution out yet. But I always try to steer people in the direction of multi-sig first. Because you know what? I see a lot of overlap between startups and bands. Because they all have these cool ideas, and then they break up. And then, so what if you just like kind of had this multi-sig thing for the band where everyone gets paid to the multi-signature address as a real simple version, and then you're kind of motivated to come to an agreement, to get the payment. And then you stay together, because a lot of times what happens with bands too, maybe one guy even has the rights to the song, but the other guy was just the drummer and he didn't even understand all that stuff. You see what I mean? So I think multi-signature could maybe help that a little bit. I think that it all, that whole system about the royalties, that's been ripe for disruption for a while, and, it's bound to come. And I think, let's see what the best, easiest way for musicians to get a hold of this. So, yeah, why not doing it on the blockchain like that? I think that's a good way. And I think some kind of multi-signature thing with the rights is a good way to do it too.
Yep. I certainly hope that it can fix the rights problem, and it can get more money directly into the hands of the artists from their fans, from their friends. Sorry, Chris, but for fans or friends, I hope that they can definitely, because at the end of the day, we all are passionate about something, and like Chris said, we pretty much stop it at an early age in order to go work for the man, in order to sell out and work. And so anything that's going to allow people to be able to do their passion, people to be able to express and take advantage of and pursue their passion easier is going to be huge. And that's just one small part of what Bitcoin is going to bring. It's really going to bring power back to the people. And when we say power, we don't mean just, power to the people, how it's said. No, it's literally going to bring more money into the hands of people. It's going to bring less money into the hands of huge centralized organizations. And it's going to allow us to finally have a voice. And we're going to speak with that voice through money. Like Andreas says, money is communication. And we are going to voice our opinions with Bitcoin. And it's really going to be...
I wanted to ask us, what is your favorite Taylor Swift song?
Mine, or are you asking me, or are you asking Chris?
Or anyone. I don't know. I
Chris
forgot.
is the Taylor Swift fan over here.
What is it? Bad Blood? Is that what it's called? Bad Blood?
Yeah, there's Bad Blood.
Is that one?
That's one of them.
What's the one about, like, I don't want you anymore or whatever, and she's being really...
Oh, that was from an earlier album. Yeah, I know.
Okay.
I just know the 22 song, I think. 22. Okay. All right, guys. So looks like we have only one last topic left. Really, to talk about. For this week. It's going to be about regulation. Just wanted to thank the panelists again for joining us. We don't pay these people or anything like that. I don't get paid. Chris doesn't get paid. We don't get paid to be here. We just are here purely to bring information to the people, purely to clear up what the hell the media screws up every single time. And really, we're just following our passion, and we're talking Bitcoin. So let me bring up the final topic here, paste it into the chat. It's going to be the SWIFT recently announced Bitcoin regulation in the EU won't happen soon. So We're going to be talking a little bit about regulation kind of in general, I guess, but also specific to this article. Chris, tell us, what do you think? Regulation in the EU won't happen soon. What do you think?
I think the regulation already exists in the code base and the community that use it. It doesn't require external intervention from so-called lawmakers who have such hubris as to assume that they can anticipate ahead of time the happenings in the universe. They do not respond to unique situations in unique ways. They respond to unique situations in general ways. They follow rules, they have a manual, it tells them what to do, and that absolves them of any responsibility when policing this planet. And of course, all that does is that laws themselves give license to lawmakers to make predictions about how the law-abiding citizenry will act. Because if you know that your citizens are so scared and afraid of the force of violence that you impose on them as a state, then you know what they're going to do because you wrote the laws. You know how they're going to work. And you can then start to make predictions. The word prediction comes from the word predire. It means to predator. You're a predator because you make predictions about some other entity. And you're able to exploit and eliminate certain people from society or put them at a disadvantage because you're able to make predictions about them that serve your needs. Now, the reason why we don't all live in the trees anymore, and we're not animals and it's not survival of the fittest, is because we have this thing called civilization and society. Every citizen is a human, but not every human on this planet is a citizen. And the reason we form these societies is to bring about a kind of a shield or a protection around a person so that they can secure their body. And once you secure your body, you secure your freedom. And once you secure your freedom, you are no longer bound by nature's harsh laws. You are no longer the victim of circumstance or some predator that finds you. You have time to discover what you're really good at. You have time to explore creative pursuits. And that's really what we are. As human beings, we are these creative entities that are never quite where we want to be. We're always kind of detached from the earth, and yet we're from the earth, but we're quite, full of ideas, and we're always dreaming about the future. And money, as Simmel says, the sociologist Simmel said that money was a way of converting quantity into quality. And I would also quote another philosopher, I know this is very philosophically intensive, but Pirsig defined equality as an event. Quality is something that happens in time. And so really you can think of money as an abstract concept. When somebody tells me they need money, I hear one of two things. I either hear you want security because you don't have very much of it already and you want your basic needs taken care of, or I hear you have lots of money but you want more because you want control. In fact, you don't really know what you want. That's why you want the money, because the money is the kind of the substitute for whatever it is that you may eventually decide to use it by. And as a result, what I'm interested in is not these kind of lawmakers that are arrogant enough to assume that everyone has to go through them. I'm interested in a world where we form laws around natural structures that are found in nature, around the natural borders and boundaries, around the consensus, as we defined it earlier in Gadamer's terms, of what is the state, what is the nature of things, how should we coordinate ourselves. And absolutely, we should be conflicting over this, and absolutely we should be arguing over this. What I disagree with is when we start to get violent. And that is where, unfortunately, the state still has leverage. The state has a monopoly on violence, and so it does, to a large extent, prevent citizens from having violence. They're able to take recourse through the justice system. But at the moment, the justice system only works for the rich, because in order to get access to justice, you have to be able to afford a lawyer, and you have to be able to pay for the court system. And if justice is the preserve of the rich, then really that's just another way of saying there is no justice. Because now not everyone has access to it. Now, the reason why the code is important philosophically for jurisprudence is that it gives everybody equal access to the code, especially if it's open source, because now everyone can see the rules. Everyone plays by the same rules. The problem with traditional finance is they don't play unless they know they can cheat ahead of time. They don't engage in a contract unless they know the terms favor them over you. They won't sign it. They will just go somewhere else and take their business elsewhere, and they know that they have the controlling interest in that agreement, so you will eventually sign it. So what Bitcoin does and these other open source software is it says, okay, we all play by the same. Before we take part, let's have a constitutional moment. Let's all decide how we're going to play this game. And if you agree, then you can engage. If not, you don't have to. Bitcoin is a voluntary system. You don't have to take part in it if you don't want to. You can go use something else. It's open source. The core developers don't have a monopoly over the code, as Jeff Garzik said during the whole block size debate. And this is why there was nothing technically wrong with what Mike Hearn and Gavin were doing when they proposed XT. Nothing wrong with it. I mean, ProTip is technically a fork of Bitcoin, but it doesn't disagree with any of its consensus mechanisms. So we can change things around the edges, and we can do clever things with the unspent outputs to minimize the transaction fees and all this. That's all fair game, so long as the software doesn't break any of the core consensus mechanisms, because we all agreed going into this that this is how we were going to play the rules. And this is who can change the rules. These are the terms on which they can be changed. Not like with regulation where they just change it. Oh, look at the way human rights, all of a sudden, because we have a terror attack. And now all of a sudden human rights aren't rights anymore, they're privileges. And we're going to take all of those away. So what was the point in writing them in the first place? If a law isn't enforced, it's not law anymore, it's literature. All you've done is written something down and called it a law. It's not really a law if it only applies to a subset of people for a specific duration of time. You're masquerading as nature. You're playing God as state, as regulator. And we can't, this is no way to run a civilization. We need to have a much, much open discourse, give every human being a voice. And once they have a voice, they become a citizen of this planet. It's about giving people permission to connect wherever they are. Prevent immigration from becoming an issue by not letting it become an issue when everyone starts piling up at the border. Give everyone the ability to self-assert an identity without a government intervention initially. When they're born, they can self-sign their own birth certificates. Give them that ability and let them assign to that identity their work, their contributions to their community. Let them not be defined by where they were born, not that it's not relevant, just that it's not the only thing that's relevant about a person. It's also about what you've contributed. It's about what you're capable of producing in the future. And that's what all this open source, particularly public key cryptography, has the ability to do. It gives you the ability to carry with you your reputation, provably, immutably. Nobody has the ability to take it away from you. I can vouch for Sal Mitra, who's put in countless hours helping us on the World Crypto Network. I can sign a copy of a reference for him with my PGP key. I can timestamp that into Bitcoin's blockchain. I can give him that ciphertext, and there is nothing I or anyone else can do now to take that away. That is his. He owns it. He worked for it. He earned it. He's got it. You can't take it away anymore. And now he can go to somebody else and say, look, I've transcribed these videos, or I've converted them to audio, uploaded them to SoundCloud. I've spent many, many hours. It proves that he is capable, that he is dedicated, that he is hardworking. And it gives him the ability to travel from port to port, pass from port to port. That's where the word passport comes from. It comes from the word passage from port to port. And it actually should be much more meritorious than it currently is. At the moment, it's not meritorious. It's based on, where you grew up, which is an accident arising from circumstance. It's not very interesting. Like having money doesn't tell me anything very interesting about you. It's not the first thing I go around asking people when I meet them, because I don't really care how much money you've got. I don't really care where you come from. I'm really interested in what your goals are. What are you promoting? What are you interested in? What are you saying? I'm not really interested in all these other things. And as a result, I think what we end up with is, as Martin Luther King famously said, you judge people by the content of their character rather than things they don't have control of, things that were predetermined before they were even born, like the color of their skin and all this obsession over pigmentation and whether they were indoctrinated into a particular religion from birth. Again, another thing that they don't necessarily have control over. Okay, so I don't buy into this whole regulatory thing. I find the whole thing largely irrelevant for all of the reasons that I just laid out. The regulation now exists in the code. If you don't know how to code, I feel sorry for you. I'm sorry, but please don't moan about it and keep arguing your case and trying to create more of these pointless laws. All code is English with less syntax. You have to be a bit more rigorous with it. And you can learn it today. There's very little barrier to entry. Go to Code Academy, go to Khan Academy, go to any of these other, Udacity, any of these websites, and you can learn to code over a weekend. You can do it. And you can get to a good enough level, where you don't necessarily have to be a bricklayer, but you can be an architect. You can start to write out some designs. You can get other developers on board that can help you out. All you really need is vision, passion, and a bit of ability, and that will go a long way. We don't need...
You mean you're not pitching here? You're not interested in the money? You weren't interested
is-
in how much
no,
money
no.
I have. I
No,
know. I'm
I
just
don't give a
joking
fuck
with you.
how much you see.
I know. Yeah. No, that was your Shark Tank pitch right there.
So to anybody who who might be thinking that why doesn't everybody else talk? Why do we let Chris go on so on? It's because the dude's a freaking genius. I mean, where else the hell are you going to find conversation where the guy breaks down the words for you? I mean, this is exactly the meaning of the words. This is what people need to hear. This is what people who are asleep need to hear to wake up. And this is important stuff. And so, a little bit on just a quick note on the philosophy part where you're talking about are we from Earth or are we part of Earth? I tend to go to the Alan Watts kind of view on that. Where he pretty much kind of flat out with logic says we are from here. We're actually from Earth. We don't actually come into Earth. No, we're from it because we clearly come from the same material that the planet comes from, and so on and so forth. So, I don't want to sidetrack it too much, but absolutely amazing talk. Thanks again, Chris. I mean, if I could have you here on every weekend, I would, man. It's priceless information. Thanks again. It's awesome. And just one more thing to your point, Chris. I really, that's why I'm really excited about things like BitNation. We talked a little bit about it last week on the show, but I'm just really excited for projects like BitNation that allow you to have a global citizenship, because there is no country that will give you a global citizenship. There is nothing that will give you a global citizenship except something like Bitcoin, a global public ledger. And this didn't even exist until 2008. So really, we couldn't almost even be claimed to be citizens of Earth before 2008, because the entire state, every state and every nation would just tell you you're wrong. No, you're an American, or no, you're an Australian. No, we are freaking Earthlings, people. This is where we all are, and I really hope that Bitcoin can break down the borders, help break down the borders with that. Daniel, your comment: the Bitcoin regulation in the EU won't happen soon. What do you think?
Yeah, pretty much agree with that. Have the same kind of mindset. I think Bitcoin regulates itself, or math regulates Bitcoin. However you want to look at it. Definitely not a fan of state regulation. The place where some people trip up is they'll say like, maybe I don't like I don't like regulation, but we need it in order for people to be willing to use Bitcoin or to innovate in Bitcoin. Now, I think that's an unfortunate reality to a certain extent, because in a lot of cases it is true that there are people who will not work in a certain space if they're afraid of laws and regulations or what they might be. I to a certain extent, I think that's true. Now, long term, I think that regulation is going to suppress innovation. It might allow for a start, but then all of a sudden it's gonna jump in and say you can't do this, you can't do this. You got to pay us this much money to do this. You got to pay us this much money for this license and all that stuff. That's kind of where I would see it long term. Now, even then, though, you have the option. You can either I want to support Bitcoin. I want to push for Bitcoin innovation, whatever. My options are, even if I buy the story that that regulation will, or that lack of regulation holds back the beginning of innovation. Even if I buy that, my options are either I push for regulation, and then I get the regulation, and then people are like, okay, I'll innovate now, and they do a little bit, whatever. Or my other option is to push for people to innovate anyway. I want to push for people to say, I don't care if there's no regulation. I don't care what the regulation's going to be. Hey, look, it's not going to happen for a few years anyway. I got time. I'm going to get in there and start doing something. And so that's how I would go about it. That's what I would push for, is innovate anyway. Don't worry about what the state is going to say. Just get out there and do what you think you can, what you think you should, what you think is best. Help people design things for people. Do what you can. So
Yep, follow your passion. Definitely.
And we have the extra time too. That's I guess the main point with this article is it's a few years, so we have the time to get in there before we have to worry about anything. So
for sure, yeah, definitely agree with those points. Just my quick 2 cents. I just really, before we go to Theo, I just really think that, man, I have to tend to agree with regulation to what Andreas Antonopoulos, always says, is that regulation just doesn't save us. It's not a parachute. It's not a trampoline. It's not anything that's going to stop you from it's not anything that's going to stop the bad guys from coming. It's not anything that's going to actually protect you from the bad guys. Where was regulation in 2008? Did it protect the people losing millions of dollars in the stock market because of inside information and because of high-speed trading? Where's the regulation when Operation Fast and Furious happened? Regulation doesn't stop anything. In fact, if anything, just like Daniel says, it stifles it. It will stifle it, and it continue to stifle it even more as time goes on, because as more time goes on, more regulation gets added, makes it more difficult, higher barrier to entry. So it's in my opinion, absolutely ridiculous, but I know that I also live in reality, and I know that these overlords aren't going to give up their power very easily, so they're going to continue to try to force regulation upon us. But at the end of the day, to what Human Tube was saying in the chat, they're like, they regulated New York, they're going to regulate California next, and so on and so forth. Yeah, they're going to try. Okay, let me say that again. They will try. That does not mean they're going to succeed. There are plenty of people in New York that are developing Bitcoin applications without a license. And there's going to be plenty of people around the rest of the world that are, more importantly, around the rest of the entire planet that are going to be developing with or without those crazy regulations. So at the end of the day, those regulations, in my opinion, are just irrelevant. And really, at the end of the day, they're going to be outdated. I really think they're going to be outdated, useless, irrelevant, basically just as irrelevant as the banks one day, because it's just not human. It's just not moral. It's just not anything good to tell someone what they can and can't do. And so, Theo, I'm going to bring you in here last. This is the last topic that we got. Well, let me hear your thoughts, man. What do you think? I'm quite curious to see.
Okay, well, what was the? You mean, really, what's the question? What is it? EU not going to bring regulation soon? What was it again?
Bitcoin regulation in the EU won't happen anytime soon, and this is coming from Swift.
Well, yeah, I mean, it depends on what you define as, Bitcoin regulation. If, theoretically, a lot of stuff applies as far as income, capital gains, and things like that already applies. So it really just depends on, what that means. There was a relatively positive decision by the European court that said a Bitcoin transaction from is VAT free, so value added tax free, which is also known as sales tax. That's good, because there was a lot of confusion about that, as far as that. So that's also a form of regulation. So that is in the clear for now. Yeah, of course, the reason Bitcoin works is because it self-regulates. That's the magic in the magic internet money. That's the magic part, is that, I can send any of you guys some Bitcoin and it works, regulates itself, and we don't need a company. So that's the thing. Everyone in the sense of governments, banks, institutions, and everyone else is trying to figure out, how does that work? Why does it work? And how can I still be relevant? And that's basically what it's all about. How can I still be relevant? So as far as the government is concerned, well, they're going to try to be relevant because they're saying, okay, I have to protect consumers from risk, and I have to protect consumers from scams. And I don't know, whatever other things they say, they want to protect us from ourselves, right? So, that's how they remain relevant, by regulating. Regulators, like the song, right? So, and I think that's pretty much simple as that, basically. I don't know. I don't see the EU as a bastion of unregulated Bitcoin at all. I'm sure they will regulate because they want to collect taxes and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, like everyone else said, just because you regulate, it doesn't remove scammers. It doesn't remove risk. from anyone, really. So, it's just a matter, it's more about saying, hey, like someone said in the comments, we want to get our cut, right? So we want to be, or actually, that's an example of a lot of the startups and VCs and all culture and all that stuff we were criticizing here. Everyone wants to build their shiny little gateway, and my shiny gateway is really attractive for the everyday person. So that's why you have to pay me extra. Now mine is easy to use, and so the government also makes their little gateway say, yes, this is really shiny and safe to use because we said so, and so on. But it's pretty interesting that, Bitcoin, as far as transactions and so on, regulates itself. And that's why it works. So I think we've got a lot of interest. We've got a few questions and comments here. We've gone really good with the chat, but I do want to go here. I don't want to be the host, but I don't want to forget.
Go ahead, please.
No, I don't want to forget. I don't want to forget. Hold on. Let's look. Here we go. Actually, I think Sean asked it. So, well, we have the typical question: Bitcoin will not be used when it fluctuates as much as it does every day. Yeah, sure, of course. I think we can all agree that if it, quote, stabilizes, it might be used more. But, that's how currencies are. They fluctuate. It's kind of hard to deal with. On the other hand, I think when it does really crazy stuff like it's doing now, more people are attracted to it, actually. For different reasons. They think they can make money or they heard about it. But look at this. Look. Where's the one? Not about Coinbase. Excuse me. Hypothetically, what scenario would cause Bitcoin to stay niche or fail over as a concept? So I think that's a pretty difficult question in that sense. I guess theoretically a fork of Bitcoin, but that still would be Bitcoin technically. You see what I mean? Because I'm only seeing this as like either a fork like XT or a fork like alternative cryptocurrency somehow for whatever reason. That's very theoretical or hypothetical. But for me, that's the main thing. I don't care if it's I don't care if it's niche. Like I said, when I was not on camera, the public can go to hell. They need us. We don't need them. So get some balls, Bitcoin, and that's it.
Very true. Very true.
Okay.
Did you see any other ones over there that I missed?
Or I don't know if anyone wants to has another answer for the hypothetical one. What scenario would cause Bitcoin to stay in niche or fail
really,
as a concept?
But Bitcoin's biggest threat is internal at the moment. It's actually going to come from inside of itself, like we've seen with the trolling from Adam and Mike Hearn, who has recently shown his true colors by joining the banks and has given up on XT. It was never a serious endeavor. I think they were always just trying to make a statement and troll the core dev. What they really wanted to happen was for core dev to move. They felt that core dev were not moving quickly enough. However, Bitcoin's design was deliberately to be slow and measured and not hastily, because if you try to be too hastily with something as important as a global monetary system or a global financial network, of course, you're going to run into trouble. So we have to be conscientious. And it's not about reaching consensus. It's about making sure that all voices have been heard and that every voice feels listened to. People tend to assert and keep stamping their feet if they feel like they're being ignored. You don't have to capitulate. You don't have to do what somebody else says in order to silence them or in order to get them to lay off and stop trolling you. All you have to do really is listen. And once they feel listened to genuinely, not artificially, usually what I find is that as trolls, they tend to die off or they go on their own direction. Now, we already have in open source a method for dealing with this. When you fall out over something personal, you go through mediation. When you fall out over a direction of philosophy, you fork. That's the way it works. And that's how it should be. And if somebody wants to try and fork Bitcoin, I think its biggest threat at the moment really is a marketing threat. It's a threat by these large banks and institutions that have huge advertising budgets and can easily spin a narrative in the media and tell the public who are not as knowledgeable and don't understand these things, oh, we've got all the same properties of Bitcoin, all the things that Bitcoiners love to brag about the immutability, about the cap supply, about all of this, except it's a brand now that you can trust. It's Barclays blockchain. Okay, so that's the threat, is that somebody with a good reputation, I mean, think about powerful brands like Google, Amazon, these kinds of brands are very, very powerful. And if they were just to come along and start their own blockchain, that could be potentially a threat. Whether or not they'd want the liabilities, whether or not they'd be willing to let miners anywhere in the world mine on, or people start using it for drugs, of course, because they won't be able to stop that unless they put in things like Mike Hearn's idea of red listing and tainting coins, which of course ruins the fungibility of the thing. But once, of course, they do that, then it's up to us as the people that are knowledgeable about this to educate the masses who are less knowledgeable and help them understand why this is a bad idea. And that's not going to be easy, because it's very tempting then for rhetoricians or people that are clever with language to come in and use weasel words and use clever sophistry to try and win over the general public without being truthful. They just use clever words and they say, oh, this is this. And then the public goes, well, a plague on both your houses. I'm going to go with the one that's popular, not the one that's, truthful and correct. And that's the threat that Bitcoin faces.
Yeah, I would agree. That's definitely the most relevant threat. Like you said, right now, the short term, the long term would just be simply getting hacked. But every day that goes by, the Bitcoin network becomes more powerful and, more shielded against that type of hack. And especially, the famed 51% attack. It's just hypothetical and theoretical, so really, even if the governments tried to make it illegal, which they won't, because they know, and anytime you make something illegal, it just shoots up in value and everybody wants it. So even if they tried to make it illegal, they just can't. They won't. And so there really is no threat that I can think of relevant that's really going to take down Bitcoin. It's just going to keep growing, and the community is just going to keep growing. We're going to have other coins, and that's fine. We need other coins, but that's just the world. The world is not ready for more than one world reserve currency. We need one main world reserve that can be honest, and that's what the world agrees that we need. So that's what we'll get, and that's what we got with Bitcoin. So, Daniel, did you have any other thoughts to that question?
I pretty much agree. I think. I guess the question said hypothetical, and I would say one interesting hypothetical, it would be the government just kind of manipulating people's minds and convincing them not to get into it. I don't think that's likely. I think people are better than that, but it is an interesting thing to think about, kind of like a 1984-esque, where they're just like, no Bitcoin, it's bad. Don't get into that, and people don't. So, but I mean, and then even then, you're still going to have the niche, but it might stay niche in that kind of situation. But yeah, sure. Unlikely. I agree.
For sure. Theo, did you copy any other questions that I missed?
Actually, Sean did ask, do we distrust Coinbase for being VC backed? Which I think is a funny question. I mean, funny for me. I don't know. I think it's funny. Just because I think it's funny because I know Chris was talking about VCs a lot, and Coinbase we know is VC backed, and Coinbase has come up a lot in discussion. It can be a very like strongly or dislike strongly company in the Bitcoin space, as I've found out. Also, interesting enough, Charlie Lee works for Coinbase, and he started Litecoin. And it's funny because the CEO, Brian Armstrong, has come out on Twitter more than once saying more or less stuff really negative about altcoins. I just find that always really hilarious. Every time he says something like, we should ignore altcoins and concentrate on Bitcoin, he says something like that on Twitter. And I think, you hired Charlie Lee. I don't know. I just think it's it's the funniest it's fine. Charlie Lee is probably the coolest guy in the whole company as far as I'm concerned. I don't know. I mean, just from my interaction.
This is a guy that goes
It's
into
just
the BTCE troll box and pumps his own shitcoin. I'm
Yeah,
not being
you said
funny.
that. You said
Really?
that.
You did that?
Okay.
Yes, he does. Well, look it up in the
Yeah.
Trollbox Archive. Trollboxarchive.com.
Yeah, okay.
Look
Okay.
him up.
Okay.
I'll get it
Fair
for you.
enough. Fair
Because
enough.
I have heard a bunch of Charlie.
Okay,
Lee's,
well, basically, it's like
talks and
this. Well, basically, it's like this. Coinbase came to the Whale Club TeamSpeak once, the Coinbase Exchange guys, not Brian Armstrong, but the guys that run the exchange part. And Charlie Lee was the only one that really hung out longer, because basically what happened was they all got really hardcore, asked a lot of questions about Coinbase, and they weathered it pretty well. But, they kind of left. And Charlie Lee just kind of hung out and was okay, so that's okay. He hangs out. Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. But he's in the thick of it. He is with the people and the traders, whether you like what he says or not. Anyway, Coinbase. Yeah. I think a lot of their actions as far as data retention of the users and some other things like that are more. Yeah, I think people that are interested in privacy don't like Coinbase. Let's put it that way. And to
Agreed.
go along with that theme, just today, I saw a very interesting Reddit post. Now check this out. I saw a Reddit post that someone posted in Telegram, and now we're talking about it on Blab. Is that Bitstamp is now sending information to Facta or about Facta or something crazy like that. So basically you can go to this Facta site and you can, Ripple FX, exactly. You can go to this Facta website, you can type in Bitstamp and you'll find them registered in the Facta thing. So the thing is that on the surface wouldn't be that bad theoretically, but it's basically Facta, exactly. They did it without like putting a big thing on their site. So you could have signed up and not known that they're going to do that kind of share that kind of information. You see what I mean? They didn't really make a big thing of it in their TOS. Like, hey, by the way, we changed or anything like that. So that's pretty whack. And I think that Coinbase, I wouldn't be surprised if they operate in a similar style. Let's say that. And I don't like BIP 101 because of the way it was promoted. And I believe Brian Armstrong has kind of been behind it from what I can tell. That could have changed, but
still behind 101.
Yeah, it kind of, that thing changes sometimes. I don't want to get too much into that, but it seems like he's kind of promoting that, and I don't. That makes me not trust him even more.
Yep, just like you said, I think you hit the nail on the head there, Theo. If you value your privacy, you don't like Coinbase, and that's just the way it is. We still need a Coinbase. We still need a Coinbase-like thing to onboard new users, and that's great. But yeah, for sure. I mean, the die-hard Bitcoin community who are using Bitcoin because of its privacy, because of how freeing it is, they probably won't use Coinbase. They'll probably use something like localbitcoins.com and just buy directly from the people. And that's great too. And I don't have really a preference either way. Personally, I have bought a lot of coins off of Coinbase. It's just so damn easy. You just click the freaking button. But especially with their auto buy, I do the auto buy weekly feature, and with that, it's just so convenient. So, but again, that's available to 1% of the planet. Maybe 0.1% of the planet. So it's not the end all way. So there's going to be a lot more solutions and a lot more exchanges across the planet. So Coinbase, just another exchange. I don't think you'll have a problem using it if you're new to Bitcoin. I still kind of recommend it because again, it is so easy to use. Just going back to the regulation real quick, just because I have for my own question for you guys, just that I'm coming up with here on the fly. Where do you think between between the United States and the EU, where do you think Bitcoin is most regulation friendly at the moment? Is it the EU or is it America? Chris, what do you think?
It's in smaller nations like Estonia, for example, where they have an incentive. The first country to adopt Bitcoin is going to see huge benefits, but it won't be from a larger nation that already has a lot to lose by undoing its world reserve currency status. Now, remember that not too long ago, the British sterling pound was the world reserve currency. I wish I had one to show you, but I don't have any because I live off Bitcoin. But that was until Hitler put pay to that, right? Hitler was the one that put pay to it. Now, America then ended up accidentally inheriting world reserve currency status. It was never a goal. I mean, if you had asked an American after the Civil War and then up to the time of Woodrow Wilson whether or not America was in any kind of position to dominate the planet, they would have laughed at you. I mean, it was still picking itself up and working itself out. It had huge civil rights issues to deal with. It wasn't really until JFK, and you started getting, after the Second World War, you had all these allies who were in debt to America, including Britain, actually, who only finished paying off their debts relatively recently, I think as recently as the 90s. I went to a school in the 80s that had been bombed during the Second World War and was still not fully repaired. We were still in prefabricated buildings in the 1980s. So the fallout of the Second World War, when Europe really descended into insanity, during that period, it was a rejection of fascism was a rejection of the Enlightenment period in many ways. And it was about brute forcing the past into a future, right? Nazis were very up on their technology, the Enigma machine, encryption, all of this thing. The mobile phone is actually a radio that comes from World War One. That's where the technology originated, and it was necessitated by the act of war. So it's not going to be these big incumbent nations that are going to be tempted into Bitcoin. They might be tempted to use the buzzwords we've talked about a lot already on this show, but I think it'll be smaller nations like Estonia, for example, who perhaps fear, a threat from Putin, who has, his Nouveau Russia, or whatever the Russian is for New Russia, right? He has these ambitions of expansionism. And I think that they fear that, and fearful they should be. And I think anyone who, the Tuvalu or a small island like this, instantly they can raise their GDP figures because you've already got so much of the market capitalization of Bitcoin, which is already bigger than some of these smaller nations in any case. And of course, they get all the benefits that the Bitcoin has, and they need to start. I would suggest stockpiling Bitcoin. Put in your buy orders now. If you're listening from Tuvalu, you're listening from Estonia, put in your buy orders now, build up a reserve, get ready for like the dollar fallout, because every country in the world right now has to hold dollars because oil is denominated in dollars. And all of this you see around you runs on the black stuff. It runs on oil. And so that's what gives the dollar its value. It's this threat that you're going to need to have dollars. Why do you think that airplane was shot down over Turkey, right? Because there was oil going between the ISIS pseudo-state and Turkey are kind of okay with that. And they're not okay with these planes going on reconnaissance missions and bombing missions to try and stop off that pipeline. And whether or not somebody turned a blind eye to it, said, look, it's not going to be a big country. It's going to be a smaller country that has an incentive to peel off and be more innovative. And it's something known as jurisdictional arbitrage. It exists already and is well established. And I think that's good because that's what governments need. They need competition to keep.
Awesome. Do you guys have anything to add, Daniel or Theo?
I've heard. I mean, a lot of people praise the Isle of Man. I don't know the specifics. Supposedly, I mean, I think it's going to have sooner regulations, like they're already being worked on. But supposedly they'll be friendly. I don't know. But that's what I've heard.
Capital of gambling, huh, Chris? Theo, anything to add? What do you think?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, yeah, Belize, Panama, Cambodia, there you're cool. You can set up a Bitcoin company. You can do what you want, pretty much, I heard.
So anything but EU in the United States.
EU, yeah, right, yeah, exactly. Yeah, kind of. I mean, I think there's some other countries where it's also difficult too, but I know that you can set up there and they probably don't care as long as they have some money, so it doesn't matter.
Exactly.
Yeah, as far as that. So I don't see a lot of other, I mean, any sources for learning, practicing blockchain and crypto tricks. Yeah, there's a lot out there. Actually, it's kind of hard to say.
I hate to be mean, but it's almost like just use Google, man. I mean, with that general
Yeah,
question.
Yeah, like Khan Academy has some really good courses. If you want to learn, it depends what you want to do. Do you want to learn cryptography at an abstract level? Or do you, so that would be crypto analysis, which is just a very interesting topic, but you're not going to be able to code very much. But if you do, then you should look up the history of coins, which is a really good video series by the Khan Academy. It's up on YouTube. Presumably it hasn't been taken down. And they have also a very good introduction to cryptography in general, ECDSA, elliptic curve cryptography, which Bitcoin relies upon, and also RSA, which is used in PGP famously, which has the property of encryption as well as signing. They talk about those concepts. They talk about all of the important key concepts that you need to understand. If you want to learn programming, I mean, Code Academy and all of these places, Udacity, are all good. But what's more important is that you pick a project you're passionate about, something you can lose your time in, something that ends up consuming you and you stay up all night doing it, like my Full Node project, right? I picked it because I was passionate about it. And if I'm honest, I'm not good enough yet, at JavaScript and Python, and I wanted to be. And so I wanted to pick a project that I knew would motivate me, that would get me out of bed in the morning, even though I'm a bit ill at the moment, and actually make me focus and concentrate for long periods of time. So pick something that you care about, and then pick a language that is both suited to this project of yours, and also one where you've got friends and a community that you can go to for help. So check ahead of time whether any of your friends already know how to code, what languages do they code in. If you've got a lot of friends that code in Ruby, try out Ruby and Ruby on Rails. Not because it's a good language necessarily, but just because you'll have somebody to go to if you need help. Because there's nothing worse in programming when you get stuck. And when you get stuck, that's what makes you give up. Because you feel, I can't do this anymore. Nothing's working. I give up and I want to go away. You need to be able to pick a threshold. I would actually really, really recommend just getting to terms with the command line. So if you're on a Mac, you go to terminal. If you go on a PC, you go CMD and run CMD. Obviously, a terminal in Linux, any Linux user will already be familiar with a terminal because you spend most of your time there. But get used to, look up the philosophy of Unix. Put that into DuckDuckGo. Let's not say Google anymore. Look it up on startpage.com. And look up the philosophy of Unix and look up a lot of those sort of neckbeards from the 60s. They're still very relevant today about how to write good parsimonious code and about how to make things extensible, interoperable. All of these virtues, which I think has been lost and was corrupted by commercial interests in the 90s with the likes of Match.com and Yahoo and eventually Facebook and MySpace and so forth, and really did end up colonizing the web and making it this sort of private space, sort of semi-permeable private space rather than the open commons that it naturally is. You actually have to pay a lot of money. Look at how much money they have to spend at keeping it private. Look how much energy they have to put to stop their databases from being hacked, right? And that's because the internet affords the spread of information. It doesn't afford, based on what we care about, based on our attention, based on where we look, because everyone has the same number of hours in a day. You can only have one thought at a time. You can only look in one direction at a time. Your attention, your attendance to tension is scarce, and that's what they're after. That's what all the ad companies want. They want you to click on the article. Journalists don't write articles to verify the truth anymore. They write articles to get clickbait so that you click on ads. That's why, to make some publisher richer. Yeah. And that's not what the internet was designed for. It was designed to allow existence to emerge without a stable spatial referent. It was designed to give everyone somewhere they could go, somewhere they could get lost in if the world around them wasn't meeting their needs. And that's what we have, and you should support that. And yes, DuckDuckGo is great. Look up the philosophy of Unix. Get to know the shell commands, get to know bash, get to know all the stuff in the terminal. Once you've worked out terminal, you'll start to understand what programming really is. It's just a bunch of text files talking to each other. It's just an arrangement of different text files with if statements saying, if this variable is true, then do this. If not, then do this, else do this. Or go over here to this bit of code, go fetch that, go pull that into memory, put that through the CPU. That's really all it is. It's just a series of instructions. A computer can only do 6 things. There are 6 primitives. It's the fact that it does those 6 things so quickly that from a distance, what emerges is a structure. Structure is repetition. structure is rapid repetition at a distance, and that gives the emergence of watching Nyan Cat for 24 hours on YouTube if you so wish.
Well, that's
Absolutely.
really interesting. That's really interesting, but you could just hire me, a distributed ledger space developer, and I'll do it for you.
How much you charge,
Yeah.
Theo? How much you charge?
I charge. It depends. It depends. But here on Blab special offer, I'll do 29 BTC or 199 LTC an hour. And if we have a big project, then we can make a deal. Distributed ledger space is where it's at, ladies and gentlemen. I'll even give you a bonus Merkle Tree consultation, and we can get that up and going, and we can pitch some VCs with the Merkle Trees. So if you want to get up in this distributed ledger space and the Merkle Tree revolution, then hit me up, ladies and gentlemen. You don't have to learn all this stuff about bash files and scary terminal and I don't know, all this stuff. That's not user friendly. We're talking about billion users. We're not talking about typing into command line and shit. That's not billion user stuff. We're talking about making it simple. Distributed ledger space, baby.
Oh, Tony has come in here with a stonker. I'll see your Merkle and raise you an associative array.
Oh,
now we're one step away from
I like
vertical
that.
bloom lookup filters.
Associative array.
Yeah.
So behind all the stuff.
Oh, we've got a good audience. We've got a
That's awesome.
I love it. I love the intelligence of the people that watch these kind of shows. It's amazing.
This is great. I love the part. Thank you guys. Give the chat room, give yourself a round of applause and a pat on the back because you've been great, giving us questions and paying attention. It's been absolutely great. Especially listening to Chris's long-winded comments. But we love it. We love it, Chris. We love it. We love every second of it, man. Don't ever change a thing. So, guys, listen. It's been absolutely great. I guess I'm gonna eventually probably have to end the show here. It's been 2.5 hours or so. Absolutely, thank you guys so much for watching. This is only the second show. We're trying to do these every Saturday at 2 p.m. just to again try to get the information out there to the people, report on the week's news. Because the media usually gets it so damn wrong, and also because I'm just sick of the trolls. Also because I've exhausted the patience of my family, friends, and girlfriend talking about Bitcoin. So thank you guys for allowing me to really dig into my obsession. It's been absolutely wonderful. You guys have been freaking so cool. Chris, tell us if you could just tell us briefly one more time or quickly just a brief run about the project you're working on one more time, and then tell us where we can find you at.
Yeah, absolutely. You can find me on Twitter. I'm at Mr. Chris Ellis. My website is chrisellis.me. Also, ProTip, which is the tipping tool, is protip.is. And this is a full node, a Bitcoin full node. It will not ship with a miner probably in this shipment, in this cycle. But you can buy these little ant miners for as little as $25 to $30 on eBay. They're as powerful as the 21 Bitcoin computer, but they are more than half the price, actually. So this is a Bitcoin. If I just take this out, you can see it. This is a Bitcoin full node. It has IPFS, PGP, OpenVPN, Tor. So it's cryptographically enabled. Bitcoin will automatically route through the Tor network. You're anonymous by default, and it will download the whole blockchain. And then we will give you instructions on how to configure your router so that you are serving block data out to light wallets on mobile phones and things like that, and to ProTip users, obviously, who also is a light wallet. So we really do think of this as planting a seed in the ground and letting it flourish and grow. We also hope that you'll take it apart, because I will make available the disk image that goes on the little memory stick. So don't worry, you can't break it. You can just re-download my ISO image off the internet, off a BitTorrent or IPFS, and you can just flash the disk again, and it's as if you've got a brand new full node, as if nothing's happened. So don't worry, please feel free to take it apart, play around with it. You can't break it. I will be available to some extent on Twitter and on GitHub, where I will put the instructions on how to build one yourself if you're so inclined. You can also pay for this to be sent to places in the world like India, Ghana, Botswana, Brazil, and possibly Nepal, and I'm hoping in one of the Koreas as well. I'm still working on a contact there. If you are from any of these places in the world that are not Western Europe or North America, I'd love to hear from you, because if you are somebody that is known to us already, we'd love to raise some money to get you a full node so that we can get the blockchain more decentralized and distributed across the planet. Thanks very much.
Remember, this is Chris is hand building these himself for the price of a Chinese worker, ladies and gentlemen, just to prove
a Foxconn factory worker,
a Foxconn factory worker, just to prove to you guys that this can be done without raising venture capital, without upping somebody's middle class lifestyle, for absolutely no reason other than greed. This is really the future of ad hoc, and I think that this is absolutely great, Chris. So you guys really need to tell somebody about this to be able to grab one, because this is the health of the network. Having a Bitcoin node, like Chris said, will help decentralize the network, will help make the network keep it honest. So please, if you guys haven't run one yet, the Bitcoin diehards, give it a shot. It doesn't take a whole lot of bandwidth per month if you're in the US or UK. You got to handle no problem, or the EU. So please check that out. He's Mr. Chris Ellis on Twitter. So everybody check that out, give him a follow, and for sure check out the project that he's working on. It is for the health of Bitcoin, people. This is not for profit. This is for everybody. This is for the world. This is for humanity. So with that, Daniel, tell us where you can find this, man.
Yep, at you, me, and BTC on Twitter. There we go. I think that was right. Or you, me, and BTC.com. We do a weekly show. Very quickly, I want to reiterate Chris's point from a few minutes back. He said, if you want to learn code, just pick a project that you can get lost in. I've definitely never taken classes in PHP or JavaScript. I haven't even really done any tutorials online that I can remember for those. But I picked up a ton from just trying to accomplish something, really. There's a couple tools on our site, a couple WordPress plugins that I've done, and it's all just because you want to accomplish a project, and so you figure it out. You Google, you DuckDuckGo all the time, look things up. You just figure it out because you get lost in it and you want to do it. So I'll reiterate that.
Yeah, absolutely great. I gotta force myself to say DuckDuckGo instead of Google, because man, it's just such an adjective in today's society. Just shows you again what Chris said about how much power these corporations have. You don't even realize it. You're like, oh, well, yeah, they got a lot of money. Okay. But no, really, these people have influence and power. Decentralized systems have power. And this is what Bitcoin is here to disintermediate, to make sure that centralized power doesn't get too big, because every single time a centralized power gets too big, corruption happens. You cannot stop it. It's the human nature. It's just the way it is. Humans aren't bad inherently. It's just when we are incentivized to be bad, some people take advantage. And again, they're just trying to live their lives and do their thing. So we can't even demonize them. But again, Bitcoin is decentralization, and at its heart, it's freedom. So Theo, please tell us where to find you, man.
You can find me here on Blab. Make sure to follow me. I hang out here sometimes. You can find me on the web, TheoG_. You can find me. I think you should just subscribe to World Crypto Network on YouTube. You can check out some shows there. I think that's good enough. You can check me out. And yeah, we're all really corrupt here, and we're trying to get a lot of money. So buy my tokens and my cool crypto coins. I got some altcoins coming out. Theo XT. I'm gonna fork this shit.
Theo coin.
No, I'm just joking. Yeah, you can check out World Crypto Network. Definitely. I'm definitely on Twitter. I'm on Blab. I'm everywhere. Check me out. If you have any questions about Bitcoin, you can always ask me, even if they're silly or whatever. And I think that's about it. I think you guys were talking about something else, but I lost track. In any case,
it's a long show with you.
In any case, check out the Node project, grow a pair, get some nodes. Are your nodes full nodes, or are you just half full? So, some nodes out there, that's what I'm saying. Bitcoin, we got to get some balls out here. We got to get balls. We don't need to be like, please join us. We're so cool and simple. No, we're just badasses. So that's it.
Awesome. Theo, awesome,
Okay.
man. Also, Theo's got this great technical analysis show where they talk about Bitcoin and other commodities, and it's absolutely great. They go through the history of things, why this happened, and on this specific year, and most of their charts date back decades. So, I mean, it's really absolutely awesome, informative. So, if you guys you don't even have to be a stock geek to check it out because there's just so damn much information in there. If you guys just
Right.
want to know what's going on, definitely check out Theo's show. So absolutely awesome. You guys have been so freaking wonderful. Thanks again. We've been recording this, so we're going to put this up on the World Crypto Network. I believe. I think Mad Bitcoin, Thomas from Mad Bitcoins, hopefully will help us out, get us on the website there. But thanks again, you guys. We're going to be here every Saturday at 2 p.m. or at least try to. So thanks a lot. It's been absolutely great. Thanks again to the panelists, Chris, Daniel, and Theo. You guys have been amazing. And we wish you the best in everything you guys do. Thanks a lot, you guys.
Thank you. Talk to you soon.
Thank you. See you guys later. Bye-bye.